Hey everyone, welcome back. Chapters 1341 through 1360 of the previous episode. Here is the English summary of the events in chapters 1281 through 1300 of Tales of Herding Gods. Qin Mu engages in an intense confrontation with the Grand Emperor, who has successfully regenerated his corporeal body and is wreaking havoc in the ancestral court. Qin Mu utilizes a mix of ancient knowledge, his mastery of the Great Celestial Heavens technique, and the power of the glassy sky pagoda to challenge the Grand Emperor. Throughout the struggle, the celestial venerables, each maneuvering for their own advantage, clash, creating a chaotic battlefield where alliances shift rapidly. Qin Mu successfully navigates these deadly encounters, forcing a stalemate that prevents the Grand Emperor from fully reclaiming his absolute power. Alongside his allies, including Saint Woodcutter, Apothecary, and the past human emperors, Qin Mu works to secure the ancestral court's resources while dealing with the fallout of the celestial heavens' military incursions. The narrative highlights Qin Mu's evolving maturity and determination, as he transitions from fighting for mere survival to becoming a pivotal revolutionary force, finally beginning the process of restoring the true Tao and preparing the next generation to overthrow the era of the celestial venerables. If possible, you can support me via PayPal or become a channel member to help me keep this channel running. Thank you. Now let's get back to the story of Tales of Herding Gods audio series. Chapter 1361 Summon Shujun. The leaf of the Tao tree? Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he sighed in his heart. It was a pity that he had almost caught the leaf. Great Change's Tao tree must be extremely powerful, and the leaf on it must also have unimaginable abilities. If he could obtain one, he would definitely be able to refine it into the most mysterious treasure. But why does that leaf look familiar? Qin Mu muttered to himself. He had seen such a leaf in Supreme Emperor's Divine Consciousness Great Overarching Heaven, but it wasn't just Supreme Emperor's Divine Consciousness Great Overarching Heaven. He had also seen such a leaf in the small metal bucket that Great Change often carried. When Great Change was lazy, he would pass the branch to them and let them use the branch to scatter the water in the bucket onto the cracked black mountain to repair it. The leaf on that tree branch was exactly the same as the one Yinner was holding. In other words, we often sprinkle water on the branches and leaves of the Tao tree. The vertical eye in the heart of Qin Mu's brows opened up again with a grunt, and he felt regretful in his heart. If I had known earlier, I would have secretly plucked 2 leaves. If the branches and leaves came from the Tao tree of Too Easy, then what water is in his bucket? Why was this drop of water able to suppress the chaotic qi in his eyes, allowing his vertical eye to see through the constitution of the great Tao in Heavenly Duke and Earth Count's primordial spirit? He couldn't help becoming more and more curious about the water in the small iron bucket. Heavenly Duke said, "Heavenly Venerable Mu, test the current vertical eye again and see its power." Qin Mu's heart moved slightly, and he once again roused his vital qi and divine consciousness to execute the vertical eye in the heart of his brows. However, the moment he executed it, he saw chaotic qi surging out from the depths of his pupils. Soon, his vertical eye became chaotic, and he couldn't see anything clearly. He hurriedly stopped, and the chaotic qi automatically entered the depths of his pupils and disappeared. This vertical eye actually didn't have any power. However, when he looked at Heavenly Duke and Earth Count, he could still see the structure of the great Tao of their primordial spirits. The vertical eye was too strange. Heavenly Duke and Earth Count were also puzzled. Earth Count had seen the power of Qin Mu's vertical eye before. Qin Mu had once used it to seal Heavenly Venerate Shao, and even his divine weapon, Heavenly Venerate Steering, had been sealed by Qin Mu. Only then did Heavenly Venerate Zhao's arrogance disappear. Otherwise, in the Battle of the Peach Forest, not to mention banishing Heavenly Venerate Shao, it was still unknown whether Heavenly Venerate You, and Earth Count would be able to escape unscathed. Logically speaking, the materials used to reforge the vertical eye far surpassed the previous vertical eye. The horn of origin of Earth Count was stronger than the Qin continent from before, and Heavenly Duke's Heavenly Tao crystal was something Qin Mu didn't have. Furthermore, Heavenly Duke and Earth Count had personally strengthened and refined Qin Mu with their great Tao, so the might of the new vertical eye would only surpass the past. However, it was clear that the new vertical eye didn't have any might. The problem most likely lies in the eggshell of chaos. The two saints knew clearly that Qin Mu loved techniques and liked to pile up the best things. However, good things might not be really useful. If Qin Mu had used the eggshell of Heavenly Emperor Absolute Beginning, the power of this eye would naturally be many times stronger than before. However, if he had used the eggshell that was too easy, he wouldn't have been able to activate the power of the vertical eye. What they didn't know was that even though Qin Mu couldn't unleash the power of the vertical eye, he could see through their primordial spirits just by relying on the power of the vertical eye. If it were any other paths, skills, and divine arts, even if Heavenly Venerate had executed them, Qin Mu would have seen through them with a single glance. This was the terrifying power of the vertical eye. Heavenly Venerate Mu, we have already done what we promised you. Your place is incomparably dangerous, so we shouldn't stay here for long. It's time for us to return. Heavenly Duke and Earth Count took their leave one after another. Qin Mu sent them out of the 100,000 Black Mountains, and only then did the two saints leave. They couldn't leave the 100,000 Black Mountains directly. They had to leave the 100,000 Black Mountains before they could return to their own worlds. Before Earth Count left, he said earnestly, "This Black Mountain is an ominous land, so it's not suitable for us to stay here." In the immemorial era, countless strange events had happened here. Moreover, this place is also one of the few places where we can't directly descend or leave. A gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall, so Heavenly Venerate Mu should think twice. Qin Mu thanked him and sent off Earth Count. "How could I not know about the dangers of the Great Black Mountain?" he said in a low voice. "However, the greater the dangers, the greater the opportunities. This is something I've known since I was young. The danger of the Great Black Mountain might not be comparable to any other place, but the opportunity contained here is also something that no one can compare to." This was the reason why he had stayed even though he knew the danger of the Great Black Mountain. Qin Mu gathered Wei Suifeng, Granny Si, Prince Yuming, Yuchudu, and the others. The Dragon Qilin, Yenner, and Blind Mute were also invited by him. Uncle Jun, lead first ancestor Lan Yutian, Su Shanghua, and the rest into the back of the ancestral court. "It's incomparably dangerous there, so I'll execute the summoning divine art to see if I can summon them back." "Can humans also be summoned?" Yuchudu was puzzled. Summoning huge beasts is already unimaginable, so wouldn't summoning humans be even more shocking?
Qin Mu smiled.
"Junior nephew, the marvel of using it depends on one's heart. When you learn a divine art, you also have to know how to infer from one's actions. There's not much difference between a human and a giant beast, they're both lives. On the other hand, a summoning divine art is to establish a connection with the person being summoned. Through a strong divine consciousness, it will pull the person from another space to our current space." Yuchudu seemed to understand but didn't, nodding his head repeatedly. Qin Mu said to Wei Suifeng, "Don't let your disciple teach Hua Xuanxiu. If you continue to teach her, she'll be useless." Yuchudu's face flushed red, and Wei Suifeng could also see that his disciple had a huge weakness in adapting to changes. He smiled and said, "Then let me teach her." Qin Mu shook his head. "You are the same as your disciple." Wei Suifeng's face flushed red as he said angrily, "If you are capable, teach her." Qin Mu, however, found it troublesome. He took a glance at Granny Si and she understood. "I'm still teaching little Wen Yuan and Prince Yuming, but there's no harm in letting Xian Shou follow me. Prince Yuming is too old and little Wen Yuan is too young, so I just happen to have a companion." Patriarch Wen Yuan's face flushed red as he muttered, "Call Patriarch, don't call little Wen Yuan. Muea." Qin Mu's expression sank. "Don't call Muer, call me Old Cult Master." Patriarch Wen Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry and asked, "Old Cult Master, if you could summon Uncle Jun and the rest back, why did you call us? Could it be that you think there will be danger when you summon them?" Qin Mu praised in his heart, "As expected of young Patriarch, your brain is really smart." His thoughts moved slightly and he executed his vital qi divine consciousness, shouting in a low voice, "Rise!" His magic power revolved and he instantly visualized a huge sacrificial altar. The vital qi imprints on the sacrificial altar turned into all kinds of summoning runes. The sacrificial altar quickly turned into a corporeal form and laid under everyone's feet. Earth Mother Primordial Lord also knew how to summon divine arts, but when she executed this kind of divine art, she needed to control the roots and trees to turn them into sacrificial altars. Qin didn't need to do so and directly visualized a corporeal form with his powerful divine consciousness. It was incomparably simple and neat. Qin gave a loud shout, and an even bigger altar rose from the bottom of the huge altar. Everyone stood on the first altar and looked down. They saw that the second altar was 2 to 3 times bigger than the first one. Suddenly, a third altar appeared from below, and it was much bigger than the second one. Qin visualized 9 altars in succession, and when the 9 altars were stacked together, they were as tall as mountains. The reason why I called all of you here is because there are countless huge beasts on the back of the ancestral court, and their abilities are unparalleled. There's also Long Shao, an existence that can fight with celestial venerables. Qin executed the 9 sacrificial altars, and his summoning divine art instantly burst forth. I'm afraid Long Shao will seize this opportunity and pull me to the back of the ancestral court. Everyone, your divine consciousness is one with me. So I'll bring your divine consciousness through the back of the ancestral court. When everyone on the sacrificial altar heard that, they released their divine consciousness and the power of their summoning divine arts burst forth. A dazzling light shot straight into the sky and disappeared from the ancestral court. Everyone's divine consciousness was connected to Qin divine consciousness and came to another world along with the dazzling light. On the back of the ancestral court. In that world everything was incomparably huge. The mountains were clear and the water was beautiful, and it was even more full of life than the front of the ancestral court. The front of the ancestral court was still as desolate as a desert a few years ago. It was only when 10 heavenly venerates had established their own territories in the ancestral court, and the void beasts were controlled by the dragon Qilin that the plants grew. After Earth Mother Primordial Lord came to the ancestral court, her power allowed the plants to grow rapidly, and the ancestral court gradually became greener. However, it was still far inferior to the back of the ancestral court. The front of the ancestral court had been gnawed clean by the void beasts, and many of the rare herbs and rare trees that were native to the ancestral court had already been exterminated by the void beasts. Only the 5 great mineral veins and the great blackwood were left in dangerous places that the void beasts couldn't enter. There were still some incomparably precious spirit herbs and forests left behind. However, the back of the ancestral court hadn't been plundered by the void beasts. When everyone's divine consciousness followed Qin through the majestic rivers and mountains on the back of the ancestral court, they saw countless spirit herbs bursting out with astonishing spirit energy. There was a huge flower that was as tall as a person and had existed for an unknown number of years. The flower room was very deep and spirit energy fountains were gushing out from it. It was because this spirit herb had accumulated too much energy, and had no choice but to release the excess energy in its body. This spirit herb's age must be frighteningly ancient. Then they saw a magnificent sight of a spirit herb that was like a vast ocean, with tens of thousands of spirit herbs spurting out spirit energy fountains at the same time. That scene could be said to be incomparably spectacular. Everyone's spiritual sense was unstable, and they were deeply shocked by this scene. This scene was not only something that had never happened in the myriad realms of the heavens, but even the ancestral court had never seen it before. There were so many types of spirit herbs on the back of the ancestral court, so many that it was truly hard to find. If Apothecary sees it, won't he go crazy?
Granny si mattered.
At that moment, Qin divine consciousness brought their divine consciousness, and moved at an incomparably fast speed. This was something that Uncle June had once worn, and he used it to search for his soul. This was another use of Soul Guide. When he said that the marvel of using divine arts lay in one's heart, he wasn't boasting. When the divine arts were used in his hands, it was truly astonishing. Everyone's divine consciousness whizzed past the sky behind the ancestral court like a gale, following Shujun's soul. Their divine consciousness saw an even more astonishing scene. In front of them were huge pearls that looked like moons floating in the sky. Each pearl was about 100 miles long and they were dazzling. Below the pearls was a beach, and on the beach huge sea clams opened their shells. They were another type of primordial behemoth. When Qin and the rest's divine consciousness flew over, the sea breeze stirred up alarmed the sea clams. They saw the pearls in the sky falling down and falling into the shells. The sea clams closed up with a bang and spewed out waves of seawater. They plunged into the depths of the beach. The bright pearls were the treasures in the bodies of these huge beasts. When their divine consciousness flew over the mountains on the back of the ancestral court, they even saw huge beasts fighting and destroying the world. Those were adult huge beasts that had probably lived on the back of the ancestral court for tens of thousands of years. Their tendons and bodies had been refined to be incomparably tyrannical, and it was as if two martial arts emperors had used pure brute force to clash, shattering the heavens and earth. On the back of the ancestral court, there were many huge beasts with such battle prowess. Suddenly, Qin Mu's divine consciousness stopped, and so did everyone's. Everyone was bewildered, and they noticed why Qin Mu had suddenly stopped. They had actually seen the primordial god that had been born on the back of the ancestral court. It was a dragon vein of the ancestral court that was undergoing transformation. The mountain range was like a crouching dragon that stretched for tens of thousands of miles. It was too old, and its spirit energy had connected to the mountain, allowing the mountain range to be nourished by spirit energy and spirit energy unknowingly, giving birth to a body of flesh and blood. Its body was also covered in all kinds of spiritual medicines. It was constantly nourished by these spiritual medicines, nurtured by the great Tao of heaven and earth on the back of the ancestral court, and unknowingly gained sentience. Today was the day it transformed and became a primordial god. Everyone saw that the mountain rocks were transforming into flesh and blood. The foot of the mountain that was buried deep in the ground had become a dragon claw. When the dragon claw was raised, the earth shook and the mountains shook, and the dragon body slowly bulged. This ancient god divine dragon was about to take form. The back of the ancestral court is truly filled with treasure. Everyone was dazzled and amazed. This was the first time they had seen the birth of an ancient god from heaven and earth. It could be said to be an eye-opener. At this moment, dozens of adult immemorial behemoths suddenly flew over. They actually attacked the ancient god dragon that was in the process of transforming. In a short moment, they shattered the divine dragon that was the ancestral court's dragon vein. These immemorial behemoths should be kings among the behemoths, and their abilities were formidable. Killing the ancient divine dragon was as easy as blowing away dust. Everyone was stunned, and the powerful divine consciousness of an immemorial behemoth discovered them. With a roar, Qin Mu immediately knew that something was wrong, and he immediately executed his divine consciousness to escape. Behind them, dozens of beast kings were chasing after them, but fortunately, Qin Mu's divine consciousness was also incomparably powerful, and he soon threw them far away. The back of the ancestral court is a little strange. Why are these huge beasts killing the ancient gods that were born on the back of the ancestral court? Just as Qin Mu thought of this, he suddenly stopped his divine consciousness. Everyone's divine consciousness swept over, and they saw a towering heaven gate in front of them. It was two incomparably huge immemorial mountains that were completely crimson in color. They were filled with flames, and the flames automatically formed all kinds of mysterious patterns that kept changing. The mountains were grand and majestic, appearing in front of them like two door frames of a door. Each side of the two mountains had an arc-shaped bulge. The higher they went, the steeper and more precipitous it became. When they reached the peak, a lone peak pierced straight into the clouds. On the other side, it was incomparably precipitous. It was perpendicular to the ground, and there wasn't a single extra mountain. They were symmetrical to the left and right, and the door in the middle was slender and long like a line of sky. Between the two mountains, a strange power condensed and filled the door with blazing path fire. The further they went in, the fiercer the path fire became. This path fire was extraordinary. It was the true fire of the great Tao formed by the two mountains. South Heaven Gate. Everyone's divine consciousness fluctuated, and couldn't suppress the shock and excitement in their hearts. This was the true South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court. When they heard Qin Mu say that there were 4 great heaven gates in the ancestral court, they had some doubts. They never expected to see the true South Heaven Gate on the back of the ancestral court. Only then did they know that what Qin Mu said was true. Strange. Qin Mu's divine consciousness fluctuated, and he pondered over it. Why is South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court on the back of the ancestral court? Could it be that the 4 great heaven gates aren't necessarily on the front of the ancestral court? He had originally thought that the 4 great heaven gates, the ancient Jade Lake, and the ancestral court, the Jade Capital, were all on the front of the ancestral court. Uncle June must have known the whereabouts of these places, which was why he had used his divine consciousness to find Uncle June and summon him back to the front. After all, the back of the ancestral court was the territory of a terrifying creature like Long Xiao. If he barged in rashly, he would definitely clash with Long Xiao, who commanded all the ancient behemoths on the back of the ancestral court and had great power. He was only doing this to save people. There was no need for him to offend such an existence. And now, it seemed that if the 4 great divine gates were on the back of the ancestral court, they would also have to enter the back of the ancestral court with their real bodies. If I can avoid conflict with an existence like Long Xiao, I'd better try my best to avoid it. Qin Mu couldn't help feeling worried. Long Xiao was too powerful. When primordial Lord Earth Mother summoned him, the 9 heads covered the sky. The scene was truly shocking, and Qin Mu didn't want to offend such a powerful existence. He continued to move and followed the aura of Shu Jun's soul. The aura of Shu Jun's soul became clearer and clearer, and Qin Mu's spirit was greatly boosted. He and Shu Jun were also clearer and clearer, and he could already clearly sense Shu Jun's exact location. He's still alive as expected. Qin Mu was slightly at ease. He could sense that there were many people with Shu Jun, and they should be Lan Yuqian, Su Shanghua First Ancestor and the rest. As long as these people were still alive, he would have a way to get them out of the back of the ancestral court and make a long-term plan. Whoosh! Qin Mu let everyone's divine consciousness to approach Shu Jun and the rest. As long as he got close, he could immediately use his divine consciousness to form a summoning divine art that would sweep them away and summon them to Great Black Mountain. At that moment, Shu Jun's divine consciousness suddenly came into contact with Qin Mu's divine consciousness. In an instant, Shu Jun understood his reason for coming, and his divine consciousness was filled with panic. Heavenly Venerate Mu, quickly leave. Qin Mu was slightly stunned and didn't understand what he meant. Just as he was about to ask, Uncle Jun's divine consciousness fluctuated violently. Long Xiao is here and has trapped us all. He has long noticed you all and is waiting for you to walk into his trap. Qin Mu was astonished, and he immediately pulled back his divine consciousness. Suddenly, the void trembled violently, and an incomparably terrifying divine consciousness wave crossed over the instant Qin Mu and Uncle Jun's divine consciousness came into contact with each other, separating their divine consciousness. The divine consciousness didn't have a physical object and was just a thought. However, this terrifying divine consciousness was like a physical object, like a mountain that connected heaven and earth, standing in front of Qin Mu and the rest's divine consciousness. Shua! An incomparably bright light shone, and Wei Suifeng, Granny Si, Prince Yu Ming, and the rest felt as if their divine consciousness had met a blazing sun and started to melt rapidly. They seemed to have seen an incomparably spectacular and terrifying scene. 9 dragon heads that filled the heaven and earth filled their divine consciousness vision, causing their divine consciousness to continuously collapse. Long Xiao, that incomparably terrifying primordial creature whose strength was close to Supreme Emperor. Just the appearance of his divine consciousness was enough to make them unable to withstand it. Great Luo's supreme divine consciousness. Qin Mu imitated Supreme Emperor's supreme divine consciousness domain and burst forth. When the domain was unleashed, everything instantly became incomparably slow, as if time was condensing. Long Xiao's incomparably terrifying divine consciousness was also affected. The process of invading his supreme divine consciousness domain was stretched out endlessly, and he was unable to destroy their divine consciousness in one go. Of course, time didn't exist. This was only an illusion created by the supreme divine consciousness domain. It was the suppression of the divine consciousness of the intruders. The pressure was also mutual. Qin Mu's supreme divine consciousness domain was only a fake supreme divine consciousness domain. His great Tao of divine consciousness hadn't cultivated to the level of Supreme Emperor, so he restricted Long Xiao's divine consciousness from invading. At the same time, the pressure on him also increased explosively. His supreme divine consciousness domain let out crackling sounds, and terrifying cracks appeared in the void of the domain, pressing down on his divine consciousness until cracks appeared. Long Xiao was so strong that he couldn't be suppressed. However, Qin Mu finally obtained a chance and immediately sent the divine consciousness of Wei Suifeng, Granny Si, and the rest back to the Great Black Mountain. Everyone woke up from the sacrificial altar of the Great Black Mountain, and their divine consciousness returned to their corporeal bodies. Granny Si, Patriarch Wen Yuan, and the rest immediately examined Qin Mu's corporeal body, but they saw that his primordial spirit was still there, but his divine consciousness hadn't returned. This is bad. Could Heavenly Venerate Mu's divine consciousness have been trapped by that invincible creature? This is bad, that creature is too terrifying. Everyone panicked and Wei Suifeng said solemnly, "Everyone, don't panic. If my junior brother can send us back, he will definitely be able to escape on his own. The reason why he didn't come back directly is probably because he wants to see Long Xiao." Granny Si, Patriarch Wen Yuan, and the rest let out sighs of relief. They hadn't thought of this, so they lost their sense of propriety. Since Qin Mu could send them back, he would definitely be able to escape on his own. This brat, isn't his guts a little too big? Granny Si gritted her teeth and said angrily, "We should spank his ass." The moment she said that, everyone's eyes turned bright. Prince Yuming coughed and said, "Fellow Taoists, see, you have to keep your word. You can't say you'll hit him but you won't hit him." Wei Suifeng, Yu Chudu, and the rest nodded their heads in agreement. As an existence who has entered the path of divine arts, you can't go back on your word. The dragon Qilin also wagged his tail in excitement. He wanted to speak, but he was afraid that Qin Mu would notice. The little green sparrow on his forehead raised its wings to express its agreement. Granny Si was still reluctant to fight, so she could only say, "We'll talk about it when he comes back." Suddenly, the 9-layered sacrificial altar trembled violently, and a vast and deep divine consciousness went straight to the great black mountain from another dimension. It pulled Qin Mu's corporeal body up from the sacrificial altar, and even the 9-layered sacrificial altar was pulled up, preparing to fly into another dimension. The bodies of everyone on the sacrificial altar were unstable, and Crown Prince Yuming and Wei Suifeng were the first to react. They stretched out their hands and grabbed onto Qin Mu's leg, preventing him from being pulled into the back of the ancestral court. They were astonished. The owner of this divine consciousness was none other than Long Xiao. This terrifying creature had actually followed the trail of Qin Mu's divine consciousness and tried to summon Qin Mu's corporeal body to the back of the ancestral court. Even if Wei Suifeng and Crown Prince Yuming were existences of great circle of Emperor's throne realm, they couldn't resist Long Xiao's terrifying divine consciousness. Their bodies were pulled up and couldn't help floating in the air. "Hold him back!" Wei Suifeng roared furiously and his primordial spirit burst forth. The heavenly palace behind him floated and his primordial spirit rose from the Emperor's throne with a loud bang. He mobilized all his magic power. On the other side, Crown Prince Yuming's black tortoise primordial spirit also floated in the air and used all its strength to hold Qin Mu's body back. The others also made their moves and finally pulled Qin Mu's corporeal body down to land on the 9-layered sacrificial altar. However, what shocked them was that the 9-layered sacrificial altar actually flew into another space. The instant Qin Mu's feet landed on the sacrificial altar, his eyes suddenly opened and his primordial spirit flew up with a whoosh. He landed behind him and shouted, "Divine treasure domain!" His primordial spirit became incomparably vast. The instant it landed on the sacrificial altar, all the runes on the 9-layered sacrificial altar lit up. The runes on the summoning sacrificial altar reversed and countless runes changed at the same time. Summoning in the opposite direction, they tried to pull their divine senses back. Seeing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Their strength, together with the 9-layered altar, was on par with Long Xiao's summoning. The two sides were in a stalemate in the air, and they were struggling to suppress each other's strength. "Use the azure glazed sky pillar!" Mute shouted angrily. Blind, Prince Yuming, Wei Suifeng, and the others all came to their senses. The azure glazed sky pillar, the #1 treasure of the past, instantly exploded with power, and all the treasures in the 28 heavens exploded with power. It pressed down on the 9-layered sacrificial altar and instantly suppressed Long Xiao's summoning. The 9-layered sacrificial altar crashed to the ground, and everyone was finally at ease. The glazed azure heaven stronghold was indeed the #1 treasure. In addition to blind mute leading eternal pieces heavenly craftsmen to continuously rebuild it, the power of this treasure had surpassed that of the past by countless times. Even though it didn't have the supreme essence divine egg as the center, and its transformation was slightly lacking, its power had increased by countless times. Qin Mu's primordial spirit was still muddle-headed, So it was clear that he hadn't retracted his divine consciousness. Everyone looked at each other, and their expressions became solemn. On the back of the ancestral court, Qin Mu's divine consciousness condensed and transformed into Qin Mu's appearance. He floated in front of Long Zhao's divine consciousness, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He smiled and said, "Long Zhao, Divine King Boyang's mount, can we talk about it?" Divine King Boyang's mount? Long Zhao's divine consciousness suddenly burst into laughter. A mocking expression appeared on his face. "Young creator, you are wrong. The three great divine kings of ancient times are not Boyang, Shujun and Gonggong, but Long Zhao, Shujun and Gonggong. Divine King Boyang is my mount." Qin Mu was stunned and cried out, "Divine King Boyang is your mount?" His mind went blank. At the instant he was in a daze. Long Zhao's divine consciousness once again attacked his supreme divine consciousness domain, causing it to be destroyed even more severely. "That's right. Divine King Boyang indeed wants to subdue me and take me as his mount, but his abilities are inferior to mine, so how can he subdue me?" Long Zhao's divine consciousness continued to destroy his supreme divine consciousness domain, getting closer and closer to Qin Mu's divine consciousness origin. "However, on the surface I still let him, making the foolish creator think that I'm his mount. However, in reality, he listens to my every word. His race worships me, making my abilities stronger and stronger. And his abilities are getting farther and farther away from me." He smiled proudly. "I became the god, protector, and guardian of his race. My prestige in his race even surpassed Divine King Boyang himself. He became the leader of the three kings because of my abilities." Even though Qin Mu was shocked, he still tried his best to maintain the circulation of his supreme divine consciousness domain. "In that case, you are the ancestor of human rearing scriptures. If the dragon Qilin met you, he would definitely suck up to you and be completely convinced by you. Since you have such formidable power and can even control God King Boyang, why didn't you become a god king yourself and let Boyang step forward instead?" Long Zhao smiled. "Little creator, you are very interesting. In that primordial era, the creators were the rulers of the world after all. They ruled the ancient gods and created batches of ancient gods. Powerful beasts like us are still too weak in front of them. I could only choose to be the controller behind the scenes, controlling God King Boyang to fight for the right to survive for my race." He laughed and said, "Therefore, when the great calamity fell and the ancient gods rebelled, the creator was exterminated, but my race survived." His laughter was filled with joy. He said leisurely, "The ancient gods led the demigods and ruled over all the worlds in the universe. They fought to the death for a piece of territory. They fought to the death and suffered countless casualties. As for us, we don't need to expend any effort and don't need to hurt a single soldier. We can rule the back of all the worlds." His 9 huge heads looked at Qin Mu and his divine consciousness domain from different angles. Searching for the flaws in his supreme divine consciousness, he smiled and said, "Who do you think is the real winner?" "It's me, us incomparably stupid and brainless behemoths. Under my rule, the behemoths lived happily on the other side of the world. Under my rule, our descendants prospered and prospered. Under my rule, we occupied half of the world. Under my rule, no other race could step into our territory. Young creator, do you want to be my mount?" Qin Mu looked at the prehistoric ruler in a daze. His eyes weren't the light of a huge beast that didn't have much thought or wisdom. On the contrary, he had endless wisdom. "That fellow Shu Jun still wants to subdue you and make you his mount. Now it seems that it's already burning incense for our ancestors that he didn't become your mount." Qin Mu couldn't help sighing with emotion. He shook his head incessantly at the thoughts and actions of the big-headed youth, Shu Jun, and didn't agree with him. Shu Jun's current abilities couldn't catch up to that of his previous life. If he met Long Zhao, he would probably be easily subdued and become Long Zhao's mount. "It's not that I can't subdue Shu Jun, but I don't like him." Long Zhao's head smiled. "He doesn't have the qualifications to become my mount. Among the three kings of the immemorial era, his abilities are about the same and can't be compared to Boyang. He's also ugly." His other head raised high and stared at Qin Mu with interest. "But you are different. You are prettier than him and more importantly, you have the potential to become another supreme emperor. As my mount, apart from looking good, you are also stronger. His third head smiled leisurely and said, even though Shu Jun isn't qualified, he brought two people worth looking at. One is called Lan Yutian and the other is Su Shanghua. Both of them can become my steed. As for you, you are the third. Qin Mu suddenly burst into laughter, and his divine consciousness trembled violently. Long Xiao, you are facing a great calamity, yet you are still dreaming of spring and autumn. If I were you, I wouldn't be looking for an outstanding and good-looking steed. Instead, I would be looking for allies to avoid a calamity. But you are still foolishly and stubbornly doing things that don't make any sense. As the leader of the three kings of ancient times, where did your wisdom go? Long Zhao's 9 heads looked at him together, but Qin Mu's expression didn't change. Since this is your first offense, I'll give you a chance to explain. Long Xiao said unhurriedly. You said that I'm facing a great calamity, so where did my calamity come from? Qin Mu smiled slightly. You can occupy the back of the ancestral court because you are the only strong practitioner here. However, the void beasts in the ancestral court have already gone extinct, so there is no longer any threat to the outside world. Therefore, the seal of the ancestral court will definitely be completely opened by 10 heavenly venerates and become an open space. When the seal of the ancestral court is removed, do you think your world of peace can still be preserved? Long Xiao narrowed his dragon eyes and smiled. 10th heavenly venerate? 10th heavenly venerate is only a junior of the later generations.
Qin Mu sneered.
A junior of the later generations? Aren't you too arrogant? Among the 10 heavenly venerates, one of them is Supreme Emperor. How do you compare to him? Long Zhao's expression changed slightly. One of the 10 heavenly venerates is absolute beginning. How do you compare to him? Qin Mu continued. Absolute beginning and Supreme Emperor are only members of the 10 heavenly venerates. Even existences like Earth Mother Primordial Lord cannot be ranked among the 10 heavenly venerates. Can you imagine how terrifying the battle prowess of the 10 celestial venerables is? You are the ruler of the back of the ancestral court now, but when the seal of the ancestral court is completely broken in the future, you will either be a prisoner or meat on a platter, waiting to be slaughtered. He said indifferently, Long Xiao, if you don't want to be ruled by the 10 celestial venerables and don't want your descendants to become food on a platter, then you need a collaborator and an ally. And me. He smiled proudly. The ally you are looking for is your hope for the future. My ally is the Heavenly Duke, the Earth Count, hundreds of other ancient gods, and many powerful heavenly venerates as well as the Creator who lives in the Great Void. He flicked his sleeve and slapped the void surged. Behind me is a huge empire that is no less powerful than your behemoth world. My soldiers have divine powers that are more than 1,000,000 strong. My battleship fills the sky and can fill the back of the ancestral court to the point where you can't see the sun. My soldiers can use their divine weapons to shatter countless heavens. He stretched out his hand. Cooperate with me and be my ally. You will have a way to survive in the future. Long Zhao's 9 heads narrowed their eyes to size him up. Qin Mu's expression was calm and he said indifferently, I've given you the opportunity, so you should seize it. Long Xiao muttered to himself and his head circled around him. He suddenly smiled and said, everything is just words, there's no proof. Since you have such strong power, then if you become my mount, won't the power you control belong to me? His 9 heads burst forth with their divine consciousness and broke through Qin Mu's supreme divine consciousness domain in one go. The supreme divine consciousness domain was shattered, but Qin Mu's divine consciousness had already vanished without a trace. Long Xiao raised his 9 heads to search for Qin Mu's tracks, but he couldn't find his divine consciousness. Only the last bit of his divine consciousness remained. Long Xiao captured this bit of divine consciousness. That divine consciousness immediately turned into a loud voice. Long Xiao, I don't want to completely fall out with you, so please don't go overboard and give yourself a way out. My people, please let them go. I will definitely repay you in the future. Long Xiao snorted and wiped out Qin Mu's divine consciousness. A mount actually dares to bargain with me and ask me to release the spoils of war. He retracted his divine consciousness, and one of the heads opened its huge eyes to see Shu Jun, Lan Yutian, Su Shanghua, first ancestor, and the rest trapped in a huge cage of divine consciousness. Everyone looked tired. They were either sitting or standing as they looked around. All around them were unusually powerful ancient beasts that stood there like stone statues, protecting Long Xiao. They had followed Xu Jun to the back of the ancestral court this time because they had originally planned to subdue Long Xiao. Even if they couldn't subdue Long Xiao, they could subdue some rare beasts. On this trip, everyone was full of confidence. After all, they were all top-notch figures in eternal peace, and they had first ancestor human emperor, who had already cultivated to skyscraping realm. Furthermore, there was also Xu Jun, the local tyrant. The past human emperors were all veterans of the martial arts world. In addition to people like Lan Yuqian and Su Shanghua who were all knowledgeable and talented, they believed that they could ride on the back of the ancestral court and be invincible. Ever since Qin Mu had passed on the Creator's divine consciousness cultivation method to eternal peace, the cultivation of divine consciousness had become a compulsory course for eternal peace divine arts practitioners and gods. There were many techniques in eternal peace, so by fusing their divine consciousness with the eternal peace cultivation system, their divine consciousness attainments had improved by leaps and bounds. Subduing the huge beasts wasn't a problem for them. However, when they reached the back of the ancestral court, they were surrounded and attacked by a group of huge beasts a few days later. They were in a sorry state. They tried to subdue the huge beasts, but to their horror, they discovered that the divine senses of the huge beasts were powerful. Not only could they resist their divine senses, even powerful existences like Xu Jun had met with strong enemies. Only then did they know that things weren't good. Fortunately, the past human emperors were all old and eccentric people. Back then they had galloped everywhere, and regardless of whether it was their schemes or their methods, they were all top-notch existences. They led the group to wander around the back of the ancestral court, dodging the encirclement of the giant beasts time and time again. With the local snake Xu Jun as well as the strongest divine sense among the group, they had actually survived in this dangerous place. However, not long ago, their group was completely wiped out because Long Xiao had personally made a move. Although Xu Jun's divine sense was powerful, it was a world of difference compared to Long Xiao's divine sense. It collapsed at a touch. First ancestor human emperor was powerful, but when Long Xiao's mighty divine sense surged over, he could not use his strength at all and fell to the ground. As for the past human emperors who were experienced in Jianghu, their experience was useless. Long Xiao swept his divine sense over them, and everyone fell unconscious. Only Su Shanghua and Lan Yuqian's divine abilities were unique. They resisted for a moment and then lost their resistance. It was because they had resisted Long Xiao's divine sense for a moment that Long Xiao saw them in a different light. He felt that their cultivation was not high, but their abilities were extraordinary. They were worthy of being nurtured. When they reached adulthood, they would be able to become his two great mounts. They would definitely be awe-inspiring. That little creator said that the seal on the back of the ancestral court is about to be broken. The 10th heavenly venerate will definitely invade. He has really underestimated me. Long Xiao slowly closed his eyes. He thought to himself, if the seal on the ancestral court is broken, then the other worlds will also be broken. In those worlds my descendants will be endless. In the origin world Xiandu Yudu, and all the worlds in the universe there are my people on the back. That is, it is hard to say who is the rightful ruler of heaven and earth. Perhaps those celestials, demons, and other living beings will become my people's mounts and slaves. As for me, I only need to nurture these two little fellows and wait for them to grow up to become celestial venerables. In this way, I can have 2 celestial venerables mounts. How can 10 celestial venerables compete with me? His snoring gradually rose. As a mount, Xu Jun's grade is a little low, but he has potential. However, riding him is a little embarrassing. I used to ride godly King Boyang. In the spiritual sense cage, Xu Jun said in a deep voice, Heavenly Venerate Mu hasn't been captured by him. Please rest assured, everyone. Heavenly Venerate Mu will definitely save us. First ancestor human emperor gently touched the spiritual sense cage. Unexpectedly, just as his palm touched the cage, the spiritual sense that formed the cage rapidly materialized, trapping his palm in it. He was about to be materialized by the cage. First ancestor hurriedly pulled his palm back, his heart still palpitating with fear. The cage that materialized just now immediately turned transparent. The divine sense cage seemed to have no physical form. It was just a transparent space that was enveloped by divine sense. However, this cage had locked them tightly, preventing them from leaving. If we use our fastest speed, will we be able to escape from the cage? Jiang Yunjian suddenly asked. Human Emperor First Ancestor's heart stirred as he looked at Xu Jun. Xu Jun shook his head and said, "We won't be able to escape. Long Zhao's spiritual sense is too strong. It's even stronger than my spiritual sense when I was at my peak." His spiritual sense cage was ever-changing. It could be condensed into the sturdiest physical form at any time, or it could evolve into the most vast void. No matter how fast you are, you won't be able to escape. Jiang Yunjian's eyes flashed. He said, "My master has been learning from the godly thief for a long time. His ability in the underhand changing of the heaven and the sun makes the godly thief feel ashamed of himself. If his speed is so fast that even the spiritual sense cage can't change in time, he can break out of the cage and escape from this place." First Ancestor and Uncle Jun looked at Lan Yutian together. Lan Yutian said, "I don't know where the limit of the change of the spiritual sense cage is. First, I need to detect the limit of its change so that I can calculate its speed and change pattern." And he was a little shy and said shyly, "My attainments in algebra are not high. My attainments in algebra are not bad." Su Shanghua smiled and said, "Dao Master Lin Xian's attainments in algebra are on par with mine." First Ancestor Human Emperor said in a deep voice, "All right. Then I'll test the limit of the transformation of this divine sense cage." He took out the yumming sword, took a few steps back, and suddenly charged at the divine sense cage with all his strength. Soon his speed was raised to the limit, and he crashed into the divine sense barrier. His speed was like a fleeting shadow as he ran madly within the divine sense barrier. However, at the same time that his body moved, the divine sense cage immediately began to change rapidly. The cage looked very thin, but when he entered the cage barrier, he immediately saw the boundless void spreading rapidly, and space extending endlessly. Not only that, when space was born, it began to materialize, making him feel as if he had entered an increasingly dense substance. His speed became slower and slower. He could even feel that the cage was assimilating his physical body and primordial spirit, allowing him to become one with the cage. First Ancestor roared furiously, summoning all of his mana and pouring it into the yumming sword. The yumming sword flew out from his hand, riding the wind and waves at an even faster speed. It shot forward, trying to break through the limits of the changes in the spiritual sense cage. In just a short instant, the yumming sword's speed had even reached the extent of crossing space. It was as if he had ignored space, almost breaking through the cage. However, in the next moment, the speed of the spiritual sense cage's change caught up to yumming sword, making yumming sword's speed become slower and slower. Right at this moment, countless gorgeous algebra runes danced around Su Shanghua, calculating and operating at a speed that could not be observed by the naked eye. Countless runes were like countless calculation spirit weapons that were activated at the same time, and as the processing center of these algebra data, he could actually grasp all the data at the same time and gather them together. Found it! Su Shenghua's divine sense fluctuated as he transmitted the results of his calculations to Lan Yutian's mind. Lan Yutian's eyes widened. He immediately stepped out and rushed into the divine sense cage. His speed had reached an unbelievable level at this moment. Cripple had taught him all the skills he had in his life, including the thieving heaven temple, and he had done it even better than Lan Yutian. He flew forward, ignoring the changes in matter and the changes in the spiritual sense cage. In an instant, he caught up with First Ancestor Human Emperor. First Ancestor Human Emperor's body had almost completely fused with the spiritual sense cage. However, he immediately felt his body and primordial spirit shake violently, and he broke away from the fusion at an astonishing speed. He looked around in surprise. Everything around him seemed to have slowed down, including the changes in Long Zhao's spiritual sense. He watched as Lan Yutian supported his back and caught up with the bright jade sword. First Ancestor grabbed the bright jade sword, and countless dazzling lights rushed toward them. In the next moment they rushed out of the spiritual sense cage. First Ancestor saw the enormous stone statues opening their eyes in surprise. He slowly turned his head to look at them, and then he saw Long Zhao's eyes slowly opening. He was inexplicably excited. At that moment, a dragon scale appeared in front of them. It was one of Long Zhao's scales. The two of them collided with the scale, and their bodies pierced through it. Lan Yuqian brought first ancestor to a stop, only to see Shu Jun, the previous human emperors, and the others beside them. The people in the cage fell silent. Lan Yuqian could indeed break through the spiritual sense cage, but Long Xiao was too strong. They could not escape at all. Can Celestial Master Mu really save us? Shu Yun Muomuo. At this moment, in the center of the seal on his back, the head of the Supreme Emperor revealed a strange smile. Long Xiao, an innocent baby. After subduing him, he has subdued the most powerful force in the world. On the sacrificial altar of the 100,000 Black Mountains of the ancestral court, Qin Mu's divine consciousness returned to his body and opened his eyes with a solemn expression. When Granny Si, Wei Suifeng and the rest saw that he had returned safely, they were relieved. Slap. Granny Si gave him a heavy slap on his butt. Qin Mu rubbed his butt and was a little puzzled, but he didn't take it to heart. Long Xiao is strong and headstrong, so he definitely won't let Uncle Jun, Lan Yuqian and the rest off. Looks like I need to personally go to the back of the ancestral court to save them. He let out a turbid breath. Even though Long Xiao was ridiculously strong, he still hadn't reached the height of 10 heavenly venerates. Compared to 10 heavenly venerates, he was still far inferior. Furthermore, the back of the ancestral court was so rich, so 10 heavenly venerates would definitely be moved by it. When Wei Suifeng, the Dragon Qilin and Crown Prince Yuming saw Qin Mu receiving a slap on his buttocks, they felt a wave of comfort in their hearts. However, they were worried about the safety of first ancestor Su Shanghua, Lan Yuqian and the rest. Don't worry, they are still alive. Long Xiao trapped them and didn't kill them. He just wanted to subdue them and make them his mounts. This matter has a huge turning point because that fellow Shu Jun brought Great Emperor's head to the back of the ancestral court. Qin Mu waved his hand, and the 9 sacrificial altars collapsed, turning into a stream of divine consciousness that returned to his mind. Long Xiao can do anything to Shu Jun and the rest, but can he do anything to Supreme Emperor? He asked solemnly. Shu Jun brought Supreme Emperor's head to the back of the ancestral court, so Supreme Emperor must have discovered the richness of the back of the ancestral court as well as the powerful strength of the primordial behemoths. Supreme Emperor's head? Everyone was stunned. They didn't know when Supreme Emperor's head had landed in Shu Jun's hands. Wei Suifeng frowned. Didn't Supreme Emperor's head land in Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven's hands? Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven has already refined Supreme Emperor's head into a treasure to intimidate the origin world. It's the other head of Supreme Emperor that I subdued and suppressed. Qin Mu said. The head in Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven's hands is the strongest. The one I suppressed is the corporeal body that Supreme Emperor visualized. Even though it's not strong, it's not easy for Long Xiao to see through him. He looked into the distance in the direction of the god execution stage of the ancestral court that Heavenly Venerate Gao Tian had occupied. Gao Tian consort was an identity of Supreme Emperor. Even though there wasn't much of his true body left and one hand fell into the hands of Earth Mother, and one head fell into Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven's hands, Gao Tian consort was still there and possessed boundless power. As one of the 10 heavenly venerates, Gao Tian consort would definitely not be able to sit still. Qing Tian consort wouldn't take the initiative to break the seal of the ancestral court and let the back of the ancestral court reveal itself. If that's the case, she wouldn't be able to monopolize the resources on the back of the ancestral court. She had to monopolize it, and the simplest way to monopolize the back of the ancestral court was to subdue Long Xiao. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes. Qing Tian consort should have already reached the ancestral court. If she wants to enter the back of the ancestral court, there are 2 ways. One is to find me. The other is to find Earth Mother Primordial Lord. Earth Mother Primordial Lord is proficient in summoning divine arts, and deduces the reverse summoning divine art from the summoning divine art. From there, she can transmit it to the back of the ancestral court without destroying the seal of the ancestral court. Qin Mu muttered to himself, this is a little difficult. After all, Earth Mother Primordial Lord isn't as smart as me. Therefore, coming to find me is the easiest way. At this moment, a woman's voice suddenly came from outside the 100,000 Black Mountains. Heavenly Venerate Mu, Empress Tianfei has come to visit Heavenly Venerate. Say Supreme Emperor has arrived. Qin Mu laughed loudly and said in a clear voice. Empress has come from afar, bringing light to our sacred mountain. Everyone, come with me to welcome Empress's carriage. Crown Prince Wei Suifeng Yuming and the rest looked at each other before following Qin Mu out. Facing Supreme Emperor, they couldn't help feeling apprehensive. Qin Mu's sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he was very free and easy. He personally led everyone to welcome them with a grand and imposing manner. Qing Tianfei's carriage came over, but it wasn't a phoenix that was pulling it. Instead, it was a majestic and huge beast of the ancestral court, and its speed was extremely fast. The carriage stopped, and the palace maids opened the beaded curtains. Qing Tianfei lowered her head and walked out of the carriage. She slowly raised her head, and her beautiful face had a charming manner that could topple all living beings. Qin Mu led everyone to stand on both sides of the carriage, and they were all respectful. Her beautiful eyes looked around and she couldn't help laughing. Why is Heavenly Venerate Mu so respectful in front and behind? Qin Mu raised his head and smiled. It's not that I'm respectful in front and behind, but that Empress is His Majesty's beloved concubine. Even though I'm a Heavenly Venerate, I'm still His Majesty's subject, so I can't be disrespectful. Empress Qitian smiled. That's not what you said when you were arrogant in the past. Qin Mu stretched out his hand to invite her, but Qi Tianfei wasn't willing to enter the 100,000 Black Mountains. She shook her head and said, "Your place is very strange. I don't want to go in, so let's talk outside." Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. Back then, when Qi Tianfei had mobilized all the void beasts to attack the 100,000 Black Mountains, Qin Mu had killed them until they threw away their helmets and armor. More than half of the void beasts had died and suffered heavy casualties. However, Qi Tianfei shouldn't be unwilling to set foot on the Great Black Mountain because of this matter. After all, she was Supreme Emperor and the void beasts were just her tools. In the immemorial era, Supreme Emperor must have also discovered the strangeness of this place, so he didn't dare to enter, he thought to himself. Qi Tianfei went straight to the point and asked, "If I want to enter the back of the ancestral court, will Heavenly Venerate fulfill my request?"
Qin Mu smiled.
"How would I dare not agree to your request? It's just that the benefits on the back of the ancestral court are so great, I'm worried that your Majesty might not be able to swallow it all in one go." "You don't need to worry about that," Qing Tianfei said indifferently. "To be honest, Divine Emperor Lang Xian has already come to the ancestral court and captured that stupid thing, Earth Mother Primordial Lord. His goal is to use Earth Mother Primordial Lord's divine art to reverse your reverse summoning divine art. With his intelligence, it won't be that difficult to deduce it. His goal is also for Long Shao. Furthermore, as the son of my wife Gong Fu in absolute beginning, his divine consciousness attainments are also extremely high. If he were to subdue Long Shao, you would be in danger." Qin Mu was astonished. God Emperor Lang Xian had come to the ancestral court and had already captured Earth Mother Primordial Lord? This was a huge matter. He didn't agree with the statement that God Emperor Lang Xian could subdue Long Shao. God Emperor Lang Xian's divine consciousness definitely couldn't compare to Long Shao, so it wouldn't be easy to subdue Long Shao. However, God Emperor Lang Xian's abilities were indeed unfathomable. If he deduced the reverse summoning divine art and entered the back of the ancestral court, it would be a troublesome matter. Even though he couldn't use his divine consciousness to subdue Long Shao, he could severely injure Long Shao before subjugating him. Lang Xian's relationship with Qin Mu was extremely bad. After all, Qin Mu had invaded Lang Xian's divine palace twice and thrice, killing countless of his disciples. If Lang Xian were to subdue Long Shao and obtain the #1 power in the world, Qin Mu would definitely not have a good ending. If this empress were to obtain Long Shao, your little friends would also be able to survive. Qing Tianfei smiled charmingly and said with a charming charm, "What does Heavenly Venerate Mu think?" Qin Mu pondered for a moment and raised his head. "All right. Consort, please allow me to make some preparations. You want to inform Celestial Master Gong to suppress me?" Qing Tianfei asked indifferently. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes trembled. He had indeed thought of driving the tiger to swallow the wolf and drag Celestial Master Gong into the water. "If you don't want to die, it's best for you to give up on this idea," Qing Tianfei said with a faint smile. Qin Mu took out a lantern and handed it to Granny C. She laughed out loud. I indeed wanted to inform Heavenly Venerate Gong. After all, Heavenly Venerate Gong is the Empress's natural enemy, but it's a pity that she has seen through it. Forget it, then Empress, shall we move now?
Kitian Fei chuckled.
Heavenly Venerate is truly a wondrous person. His expression has changed so quickly. Let's move now. Qin Mu immediately executed the reverse summoning divine art, and the two of them stood on the sacrificial altar. Qin Mu took a glance at the dragon Qilin before unleashing his divine art, and the two of them disappeared. Everyone frowned and didn't know what to do. Suddenly Granny Si said, I'll go to Heaven Court to fetch Heavenly Venerate Gong. Fatty Dragon, get ready to reverse summon the sacrificial altar and wait for Heavenly Venerate Gong and I to come here before sending us to the back of the ancestral court. Granny Si brought the lantern and left quickly. This lantern was Heavenly Venerate Yu's treasure, so it was better than Heavenly Venerate when used to travel. When Qin Mu had left the lantern, he had said that Dao Palace's Heavenly Venerate was Heaven Consort Gao's natural enemy. He then took a glance at the dragon Qilin, and Granny Si immediately understood what he meant. He wanted her to bring the lantern to find Heavenly Venerate Gao. She had the dragon Qilin send Heavenly Venerate Gong to the back of the ancestral court. When Granny Si passed by Divine Emperor Lang Xian's territory, she inadvertently looked down and suddenly saw countless roots flying. A huge sacrificial altar was taking shape. God generals lined up neatly and appeared on the sacrificial altar, and Divine Emperor Lang Xian was executing a spell to reverse the summoning divine art. As expected of Heaven Consort Chang, it's not difficult for Divine Emperor Lang Xian to deduce the reverse summoning divine art. Granny Si saw the space twisting and the figures on the altar disappearing. She knew the situation was urgent, so she did not stay any longer. When she arrived outside the ancestral court, she came to the heavenly court through the psionic moving bridge. The 10 heavenly venerates each had a psionic moving bridge that led directly to their own heavenly palace. The psionic moving bridge that Granny Si walked on was the heavenly palace of the heavenly venerate in the heavenly court. She had just walked out of the spiritual energy mutual shift bridge when she was blocked by the divine general guarding the heavenly palace. Granny Si reported, Heavenly Venerate Mu has ordered me to come here. He has something to tell Heavenly Venerate Gong. Not long after, she was taken to see Heavenly Venerate Gong. Granny Si said, Heavenly Venerate Mu was coerced by Consort Chang Tian and went to the back of the ancestral court to subdue Long Shao. Heavenly Venerate Gong immediately stood up and said, Tish, you want to overturn the sky too? Bring me there. When the two of them returned to the ancestral court's 100,000 black mountains, the dragon Qilin and the others had already prepared the altar. Celestial Master Gong ascended the altar, only to see Wei Suifeng, Prince Yuming, and the others standing on the altar as well. Celestial Master Gong shook his head and said, Can you intervene in the battle of the Celestial Master? I can go alone. If there are more people, I'll have to take care of you. Wei Suifeng hesitated. Celestial Master Gong left an hourglass and turned it over. He said calmly, You guys stay here and wait for the last grain of sand in the hourglass to fall. Then you will get the news. With that, she nodded to the dragon Qilin. The dragon Qilin immediately activated the reverse summoning divine ability and activated the altar. The altar shone with light. Celestial Master Gong's spiritual sense immediately connected with the giant beast in the ancestral court. She immediately understood how the reverse summoning divine ability was used. So it's using divine sense to build a summoning altar in the opponent's head. So interesting. As expected of Celestial Master Mu. Only he had such a wonderful idea. However, thousands of giant beasts couldn't summon me over. I'd better use Long Shao to build the summoning divine ability. The dragon Qilin suddenly felt his divine ability was cut off, and he couldn't help but be shocked. Celestial Master Gong had cut off his divine sense, and used his own divine sense to replace his divine sense to search for the giant beast on the back of the ancestral court. Celestial Master Gong is really a fierce woman. No wonder the sect master couldn't help but speak of her with admiration. The dragon Qilin thought to himself. Meanwhile, on the back of the ancestral court, Long Zhao's 9 heads were in a deep sleep. His body was enormous, not inferior to that of the heavenly duke and earth count. Only a place like the back of the ancestral court could accommodate his body. Countless huge beasts lived on his body, multiplying and reproducing. Some of them never came down in their entire lives. From birth to adulthood to their spouses to death to rotting into white bones. They were all on his body. Suddenly Long Shao became alert. He opened his eyes and looked up. His 9 heads opened their eyes, causing the back of the ancestral court to become extremely bright. It was as if 18 suns had suddenly appeared in the sky. He sensed the arrival of an extremely powerful existence in his territory. At this moment, the thousands of huge beasts on the back of the ancestral court were pulled up into the air and formed a strange formation in the air. The spiritual senses of the huge beasts were forcefully pulled out of their minds by the power that came from another world. The spiritual senses automatically combined and turned into runes. Countless runes were like the most precise parts of a giant machine. They automatically combined to form a chain. The chains weaved through each other to form an altar. That was a reverse summoning ability. Long Shao was bewildered. The last time when Shu Jun and the others arrived, there wasn't such a big commotion. But now thousands of giant beasts were pulled to form a summoning altar. At this moment, countless huge beasts were pulled into the sky and automatically formed another altar. One after another, gods and demons appeared on the back of the ancestral court. He is the so-called celestial master here? He's really courting death. Long Shao stood up and shook his body, causing countless huge beasts to roll down from his body. He was the god of the creators. He was the beast god that the creators hoped to use him to restrain and punish the ancient gods. He had boundless strength and the strongest physical body. It had been a long time since he had truly made a move. He opened his eyes and it was day. When he closed his eyes, it was night. When he moved, the entire back of the ancestral court would be filled with lightning, and tornadoes would blow all over the ancestral court. Now he was finally going to display his power. The power of the first reverse summoning divine art was fully unleashed, and Qin Mu and Qing Tianfei appeared on the back of the ancestral court. Qing Tianfei's beautiful eyes moved around, and she first landed on the huge object that was slowly rising up. She then looked at the explosion of the reverse summoning divine art in the distance. Divine Emperor Lang Xian has indeed come. Qing Tianfei frowned and sneered. Absolute Beginning wants to snatch everything from me. Power, status, women, even his son wants to snatch everything from me. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Qin Mu took a step back. He is the illegitimate child of God King Gongfu and Heavenly Emperor Absolute Beginning, Qing Tianfei said indifferently. The moment he was born, he had endless glory. He was blessed by the Heavenly Emperor and the ancient gods, becoming the first demigod and the leader of all the demigods. And he is now a heavenly venerate. If the son of Gongfu and Heavenly Emperor Absolute Beginning is still alive, he should not be inferior to him, right? At this moment, the reverse summoning divine power burst out with an extremely intense light. Divine Emperor Langxian came with Mother Earth Yuan Lord. What does Absolute Beginning count as? The divine light on Consort Changtian's body became denser and denser, and her figure disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, she appeared next to Divine Emperor Langxian who had just arrived. Her divine sense burst out and rushed over. Divine Emperor Longshuan's expression changed drastically, and he immediately grabbed Mother Earth Yuan Lord. He blocked the divine sense that was rushing toward him. At the same time, heavenly palaces flew out from the back of his head and formed a great heavenly court, raising his cultivation and strength to the extreme. Boom! That powerful divine sense circled around the Earth Mother in an instant and attacked the space between his brows, making his primordial spirit unstable. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was nothing compared to this person. He immediately knew who it was and his expression changed drastically. Supreme Emperor, Heavenly Venerate Mu is right. You are indeed hiding among the 10 heavenly venerates. He flew backward, but he did not panic. He immediately used his divine origin finger. Concubine Changtian had seen the power of this finger, and knew how powerful it was. She immediately avoided it. Divine Emperor Langxian steadied himself and his primordial spirit floated behind him. It reached the sky high behind the ancestral court and covered the sky. He sneered. Supreme Emperor, you escaped last time. Where can you escape to this time? As the 10 heavenly venerates, we have always been led by Heavenly Venerate Hao. The other heavenly venerates rarely fought. Now, maybe we should see who is the true supreme heavenly venerate. In the distance, Long Xiao saw his immortal soul, and his expression changed drastically. This heavenly venerate seems to have real abilities. He was still very confident in himself. He strode across the mountains and seas and headed in their direction. Suddenly, the two celestial venerables clashed again. A terrifying divine ability erupted, and the shockwaves of the divine ability swept in all directions. Long Xiao's body was swept by the shockwaves of the two celestial venerables' divine abilities, and cracks immediately appeared on his dragon scales. Long Xiao was shocked. His 9 heads flew into a rage as he attacked the two celestial venerables at the same time. Boom! After a few moves, he flew up and smashed backward. He was at a loss. So strong? No, my body is too big. Get smaller. His body shrank and he rushed forward again. Tian concubine Gao and Divine Emperor Lang Xian were fighting each other. They only had each other in their eyes. They did not care about Long Xiao's attack. They would dodge occasionally, which made Long Xiao lose their position. He was really forced into a corner. He sent Long Xiao flying. This beast really doesn't change even after death. Tian Qiong concubine and Divine Emperor Lang Xian saw that he was still entangled, and they both sneered. 2 waves of divine consciousness burst forth and pressed down at the same time. Long Xiao's 9 heads were muddled, and he couldn't use his divine consciousness. Only then did he realize how terrifying he was. Heavenly Venerate is too strong. Not a piece of trash like Heavenly Venerate Mu. He instantly came to a realization, and was about to escape when an even larger and deeper divine consciousness locked onto him. It controlled his divine consciousness and turned into a summoning divine art in his mind. Long Xiao's 9 heads rumbled and he felt a deep fear assaulting him. At that moment, Qin Mu came to the front of the divine consciousness cage, and looked at everyone in it. He smiled and asked, "Is everyone alright?" Long Xiao could hardly control his soul consciousness. Just as he was about to use the 9 heads to bite off the summoning ability formed by his soul consciousness, a woman's figure descended from another world. The petite figure pressed down on his 9 heads, making him feel extremely humiliated. Although he was unfamiliar with the petite figure, he was very familiar with the spiritual sense of the person. It was the same spiritual sense attribute as the spiritual sense of the other godly monarch of the 3 primordial kings, godly monarch Gong Fu. It was godly monarch Gong Fu. Among the 3 primordial kings, I am the leader. Although I am not as good as Supreme Emperor, I am not far from him. Gong Fu and Xu Jun are only fit to carry my shoes. Long Xiao tried his best to resist the invasion of Celestial Master Gong's divine sense. The moment Celestial Master Gong descended, he wanted to invade his divine sense and subdue him, making him feel extremely humiliated. But now, Xu Jun is still a weak little brat, while Gong Fu is already so strong, even stronger than me. Fortunately, Celestial Master Gong saw that he could not subdue him in a short period of time, so he immediately abandoned this action. His body flashed, and he lashed out his long whip, wrapping around concubine Chong Tian, who was attacking Divine Emperor Lang Xian. Qi Tian consort was besieged by 2 great heavenly venerates, and she was locked by Heavenly Venerate Gong's long whip. She immediately knew who was coming, and she thought to herself, Heavenly Venerate Mu has plotted against me again. Heavenly Venerate Lang Xian's divine yuan attacked with a finger, and it pierced through her forehead with a sizzling sound. This finger was so sharp that it pierced through the layers of heavenly palaces behind her head, and it made a big hole in her great heavenly court. Heavenly Venerate Gong whipped and pulled concubine Gao Tian closer, pressing his palm on the back of concubine Gao Tian's heart. There was a big hole in concubine Gao Tian's forehead, and it was bright from the front to the back. The back of her heart was hit hard by her again, and blood spurted out of her mouth immediately. Her breath slowed down rapidly. Divine Emperor Lang Xian was at a disadvantage and couldn't defeat concubine Gao Tian. With the help of Heavenly Venerate Gong, his divine power was greatly displayed. He immediately flew over, and his divine sense exploded, blasting toward concubine Gao Tian's brain. Celestial Master Gong waved his 10 fingers and pointed toward Lady Chong Tian's Great All Heaven. He wanted to destroy her Great All Heaven, so that Celestial Emperor Lang Xian could kill her. Ki. Celestial Emperor Lang Xian pointed his finger and pierced through Celestial Master Gong's forehead. The back of Celestial Master Gong's head exploded. Even her primordial spirit in the heavenly court was severely injured. The finger pierced through the head of her primordial spirit. Xuan, Ea. Celestial Master Gong's eyes were blank, and she turned to look at Celestial Emperor Lang Xian in disbelief. Celestial Emperor Lang Xian's expression was indifferent. He continued to kill her and Tian consort Gao. Mother, the era of the Creator has long passed. Since Father buried you in the ancestral court, why did you come back to life and get involved in this mess? This era belongs to me, not you. As expected, you can't trust the children of traitors, even if they are your own children. Celestial Master Gong laughed bitterly and released his spiritual sense to resist the second attack of Celestial Emperor Lang Xian. At the same time, Consort Chang Tian roared and attacked Celestial Emperor Lang Xian with all her might. Celestial Emperor Lang Xian laughed and fought against the two Celestial Masters. He said in a clear voice, "You are already heavily injured and are not my match. Emperor Tai Mother, let me send you to your death." He took on the attacks of the two Celestial Venerables head-on, and was extremely powerful, forcing the two Celestial Venerables into a disadvantageous position. All of a sudden, Long Zhao's 9 heads danced in the air as he charged forward. His 9 heads intersected with each other and struck Divine Emperor Lang Xian's primordial spirit continuously. His huge body actually entered Divine Emperor Lang Xian's heavenly court and crushed the many heavenly palaces. He charged towards Lang Xian's primordial spirit. Long Xuan was instantly flustered. His heavenly palace was damaged, and his immortal soul was injured. Celestial Master Gong and concubine Chang Tian had the opportunity to attack him again and again. Godly Emperor Lang Xian tumbled and was smashed into the dust. Long Zhao's 9 heads let out a furious roar as he attacked concubine Chang Tian, Godly Emperor Lang Xian, and Celestial Master Gong at the same time. Lowly existence, obediently submit to me and become my mount. The next moment, Long Zhao's dragon horn broke, and his dragon scales shattered. He fell and flew away. The 4 terrifying existences then rushed into the sky and fought in a mess. In the cage of divine consciousness, first ancestor Shu Jun Lan Yutian, and the rest couldn't help being overjoyed when they saw Qin Mu. Lan Yutian smiled and said, "I already said that my brother would come to save us, am I right?" He had blind confidence in Qin Mu. Su Shanghua said, "He saved us this time, so he will be smug for a few more days." However, he still revealed a smile that was hard to detect. Cult Master Qin is still so reliable, making people feel at ease. As long as he's around, we will definitely be able to turn the situation around. Shu Jun hurriedly said, "Heavenly Venerate Mu, be careful of those huge beasts. Their abilities are terrifying." Before he could finish his sentence, the attack of the huge beast guarding the divine consciousness cage had already arrived behind Qin Mu. Qin Mu took a step forward and walked into the divine consciousness cage, avoiding the attack of the huge beast guarding the divine consciousness cage. Everyone in the cage was still worried about his safety, but when they saw him walking into the cage the next moment, they were all dumbfounded and couldn't say a word. Plop. 5th ancestor human emperor sat down on the ground and said in a daze, "It's over." The others also had dejected expressions. Qin Mu had actually walked into the cage of divine consciousness, and even he had fallen here. Now that they couldn't get out, wasn't it over? Qin Mu looked around and praised, "This place isn't bad. The place Long Xiao prepared for you guys is very spacious. Not bad, my ass." Shu Jun also sat down on the ground. He said angrily, "Why did you run in as well? It's over now, it's all over. We can only be used as mounts by that bastard Long Xiao. Fortunately, there are enough people and they take turns to ride. He can ride for 1 to 2 months before he can finish." Qin Mu smiled and first ancestor human emperor couldn't help stuttering, "You're still laughing. You always do things so irrationally, and you're still laughing." Su Shanghua said solemnly, "There's no need to panic, everyone. Lan Yutian has the ability to bring a person through this divine consciousness cage. We just need to take advantage of these huge beasts being unprepared, and let Lan Yutian bring Cult Master Qin out of the cage. We still have a chance." Qin Mu looked at Lan Yutian and asked in astonishment, "Little brother, you have the ability to pass through the divine consciousness cage?"
Lan Yutian not dead?
Everyone said in unison. Lan Yutian is much more reliable than you. Qin Mu smiled and didn't take it to heart. Then do you have enough confidence to enter Hall of Fragrance Cloak? Lan Yutian hesitated for a moment and said, I don't have 100% confidence, but I do have 70%. Qin Mu pondered it for a moment. 70% confidence? That's about it, however. Entering Hall of Fragrance Cloak requires an opportunity to transfer 10 heavenly venerables away. He stretched out his palm and gently touched Long Zhao's divine consciousness cage. It rippled like water, as if it didn't exist to him. Everyone's eyes went wide. They saw Qin Mu walking into the divine consciousness cage and leisurely strolling through it. However, there were no changes to the divine consciousness cage at all. Everyone stared with their eyes wide open as they watched Qin Mu walk out of the cage and back in. The huge beasts guarding the cage outside roared continuously, but they couldn't do anything to him. Destiny has been opened. Divine consciousness path goes first. Qin Mu let out a long cry and looked at all the changes in the cage before returning to the cage. He shook his head and said, Long Shao Kong has a cultivation comparable to a heavenly venerate, but he's stuck to his own path. This divine art of his is much weaker than a heavenly venerate. It's not difficult to break his divine consciousness cage. The battle of heavenly venerate is currently tense, so I don't know when it will affect this place. I'll send all of you back first. Everyone fell into silence. Even Su Shanghua fell silent. Lan Yutian said excitedly, My brother is very powerful. Lan Yutian's voice entered everyone's ears and became rather ear-piercing. Qin Mu said with a straight face, You guys aren't weak either, you're just slightly weaker than me. There's no need to belittle yourselves. Everyone coughed and looked around. Just as Qin Mu was about to execute his divine art, huge beasts that were attacking the cage of divine consciousness suddenly prostrated themselves on the ground and kowtowed. Qin Mu frowned and looked outside. He saw the earth churning and countless roots breaking out from the ground. Earth Mother Primordial Lord's figure emerged from the ground and rose higher and higher. The ancient god's body was surrounded by murderous aura and was incomparably bloody. As she walked over, the huge beasts couldn't help kneeling down and kowtowing to her. She was the mother of the earth, the natural ruler of the huge beasts of the immemorial era. In this world, there were only two people who could control the ancient beasts. One was Long Shao, and the other was the mother of the earth. Long Shao was the leader of the ancient beasts, and he possessed supreme prestige. Thus, he could make the ancient beasts submit to him. However, there were also some who did not submit. For example, Shujun Gongwei, the supreme emperor, and the other ancient beasts would not submit to Long Shao. The void beasts would not submit to Long Shao either. Meanwhile, Earth Mother was an ancient god born from the great Tao of heaven and earth. She didn't rely on majesty, but was formed from heaven and earth. She was born from the great Tao and was a natural ruler.
Heavenly venerate mu kropka.
Earth Mother Primordial Monarch came to the outside of the cage and looked at everyone in the cage with interest. She smiled and said, You also have this day? Qin Mu's expression changed slightly. He laughed out loud. Earth Mother Primordial Monarch, do you think you can defeat me? I have Long Zhao's divine sense cage protecting me. One of us is outside the cage and the other is inside. However, I am outside the cage, and you are inside the cage. Earth Mother, farewell. Take care of yourself. Earth Mother Yuan Lord sneered and said, Do you think I can't do anything to you if you hide in the cage? You are underestimating me. Long Zhao's divine sense cage can trap you, but it can't trap me because I have obtained a supreme treasure. She took out a palm. It was the Supreme Emperor's palm, which had been refined into a weapon by her. She sneered. You are the one who caused me to become like this. Today I will completely destroy your soul. Let's see if a great mage like you can resurrect yourself. She activated the Supreme Emperor's hand and threw a punch. The spiritual sense cage, which even an immemorial behemoth could not break, immediately began to crack under the attack of the Supreme Emperor's hand. The power of hand of Supreme Emperor was extremely fierce. When the fist landed on the cage, it made the incorporeal cage become corporeal before it was broken by hand of Supreme Emperor. Earth Mother Primordial Lord struck again, and the cage of divine consciousness trembled violently. With just 2 or 3 attacks, the cage that Long Shao had laid down would completely disintegrate. Everyone in the cage panicked. Qin Mu frowned and took off the treasure seal on Shu Jun's back. He smiled and said, Taoist brother Supreme Emperor, it's time to release you today. Congratulations, Taoist brother, for escaping. Everyone in the cage was astonished, including Shu Jun himself, who had also forgotten that he had a treasure seal refined by the head of Supreme Emperor on his back. Supreme Emperor's divine consciousness was too powerful, so it affected their thoughts and consciousness, making them unable to see the treasure seal. Even Shu Jun was affected by the head of Supreme Emperor's memory, so he didn't remember the treasure seal on his back at all. The head of Supreme Emperor sneered. You released me? Heavenly Venerate Mu, aren't you being too ruthless? You released me now not only to deal with Earth Mother, right? Are you planning to let me plot against Celestial Venerate of Palace and Divine Emperor Lang Xian? Qin Mu shook his head and said indifferently, I'm just temporarily maintaining balance. I don't want to fall into the hands of any Celestial Venerate on the back of the Ancestral Court. He untied the seal of the Four Minds, and Supreme Emperor's head instantly escaped. Primordial Lord Earth Mother controlled Supreme Emperor's palm to strike again, but it suddenly went out of control. Her divine might rose explosively and struck back at her. Primordial Lord Earth Mother was caught off guard and was sent flying backward by the palm. Even the countless roots in the depths of the earth flew out as well. With a bang 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 bang, the thick roots were pulled up and flew into the distance with Primordial Lord Earth Mother. The Supreme Emperor's head floated up and looked around proudly. The huge beasts rushed over under the control of the Earth Mother Yuan Lord. However, with a sweep of his divine sense, the huge beasts were instantly controlled by his divine sense. The Supreme Emperor's head floated up and landed on the head of one of the huge beasts. He laughed and said, Celestial Master Mu, the Ancestral Court is vast and vast. This is the place where I can roam freely. It's a pity that there are no void beasts. Otherwise, I would have let you see my glory in the past. Huge beast sprinted forward, bringing his head and fist into the distance. Over there, Heavenly Venerate Gong Tianfei, Divine Emperor Lang Xian, and Long Xiao were locked in battle, unable to decide the victor. Heavenly Venerate Mu, I won't kill you, but I won't let you have it easy either. Supreme Emperor's voice came from afar and he laughed heartily. Earth Mother Primordial Lord, I'll leave Heavenly Venerate Mu with you. Qin Mu's expression changed drastically, and he stomped his feet heavily. Without any explanation, he executed his divine consciousness and the reverse summoning divine art. In an instant, a reverse summoning sacrificial altar was formed. Clang 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 clang. Countless runes flew around his body, and in a short instant, countless summoning runes were imprinted on the sacrificial altar. In an instant, the sacrificial altar was ready, and he executed his divine art. Everyone on the sacrificial altar immediately sensed Qin Mu's vast and deep divine consciousness rushing into the void and connecting with Prince Yuming in the Black Mountain in front of the Ancestral Court. Qin Mu's divine consciousness was incomparably powerful, and he turned Prince Yuming's divine consciousness into a summoning formation. In the Great Black Mountain, Prince Yuming couldn't help flying up into the sky. All kinds of beautiful runes kept appearing around him, making the dragon Qilin and the rest dumbfounded. Wang. Divine arts were activated, and figures appeared beside Prince Yuming. Shu Jun, Su Shanghua, First Ancestor Lan Yutian, and the rest appeared one after another on the rune path chains of the summoning divine arts, and the number of people increased. On the other side, Qin Mu sent everyone away and immediately prepared to summon himself to the front of the Ancestral Court. Just as his figure was about to disappear, countless roots drilled out from the ground and pierced through the sacrificial altar. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. They coiled around his feet. The roots grew crazily and quickly coiled Qin Mu into a huge dumpling, leaving only his head sticking out. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and executed his magic power crazily. His body and the roots vanished from the back of the Ancestral Court. You want to leave? Heavenly Venerate Mu, you're underestimating me too much. Just as his body disappeared, countless thick roots followed him into the void and tore at him. Earth Mother Primordial Lord's figure appeared and shouted out while executing his summoning divine art. No matter where you go, I can summon you back. Jung. A huge dumpling fell from the sky, smashing the earth and rocks into the air. Qin Mu landed straight on the ground and stood in front of Earth Mother Primordial Lord. He was firmly entangled, and only his head was left outside. Earth Mother Primordial Lord sneered. Heavenly Venerate Mu, how's this palace's summoning divine art? Can you still walk? Qin Mu stood straight and couldn't move. He smiled and said, Of course I can't walk, so I brought some good friends. Boom! A huge body landed on the ground and Crown Prince Yuming slowly stood up. He raised his head to look at Earth Mother and his voice was like thunder. Son of Black Tortoise, Yuming pays his respects to Earth Mother. Boom! Another figure descended from the sky. Wei Suifeng stood up and bowed. Emperor Yun Luo, Wei Suifeng pays his respects to Earth Mother, Primordial Lord. Boom! Another loud sound rang out and the dragon Qilin climbed up from the huge pit in a daze. He looked around and seemed to be wondering why he had been summoned over. I'm not here to fight, I'm here to deliver something. Cult Master. I'll give you the Azure Sky Pillar and send me back. Fatty Dragon. Don't you know how to summon divine arts in reverse? Qin Mu's body twisted and he suddenly escaped from the Origin Wood roots. He stretched out his hand and grabbed, sending the Azure Sky Pillar flying over. You can go back on your own. Crown Prince, big senior brother. Do you have the confidence to get rid of an ancient god? Wei Suifeng moved his body. I've fought with White Emperor and Green Emperor before, and I've also fought with a few heavenly masters. Even though I didn't defeat them, they weren't able to kill me either. They only sank me into the river. I haven't fought Earth Mother yet, so I can give it a try. Prince Yuming hesitated for a moment. Even though I've learned a lot from Eternal Peace, I've been learning all these years and haven't used it yet, so I don't know how strong I am. Teacher Yu said that I'm very stupid and that I'm learning very slowly, so I'm most likely not Earth Mother's match. The dragon Qilin quietly retreated and muttered, I'm sure I can't beat anyone, so I still escaped. He turned around and sprinted wildly, casting a reverse summoning divine ability as he ran. At that moment he noticed Long Shao and couldn't help being stunned. What a huge dragon! When can I be as majestic as him? Boom! In the distance, Long Shao was thrown into the dust. The dragon Qilin shivered and continued to run away. His reverse summoning divine art wasn't as fast as Qin Mu's. After all, Qin Mu was the creator of the reverse summoning divine art, so the speed of executing it was extremely fast. He needed time to prepare. He had to find a safe place before he could execute it easily. Qin Mu leaned against the azure sky canopy. Earth Mother Primordial Lord, we have some friendship back then. You once lent me the core of primordial wood, and a bottle of primordial chaos primordial liquid, so I'll give you another chance today. If you retreat now, I won't stop you. In the future, whether you and I are enemies or friends depends on fate. The Earth Mother Yuan Lord sneered. With just the three of you? Among the three of you, one is the Celestial Master Mu who only knows how to bluff, one is Emperor Yun Luo who was drowned in the river, and one is a demigod who has been suppressed by his parents for 600,000 years. What right do you have to ask me to leave? Wei Suifeng said sincerely. Earth Mother Yuan Lord, you have killed too many gods and devils. Your mind and soul have been blinded by the murderous aura, and you have lost your rationality. I know the great Brahma King and Buddha. Why don't you come with me to see him, and let him help you dispel the murderous aura? Great Brahma! Earth Mother Yuanjun sneered. You are not my match, so you plan to conspire with Great Brahma to plot against me? Although I have not recovered to my peak condition, I am still not a match for Great Brahma. Wei Suifeng frowned, sighed, and did not speak anymore. Prince Yuming could not help but ask, Yuanjun, do you know that the Azure Heaven Glazed Pavilion is in the hands of Celestial Master Mu? This treasure was the #1 treasure in the world back then. You should know its reputation. Although this treasure might not be ranked #1 today, after being redesigned and refined by Celestial Master Mu's parents, mute and blind, it was many times better than it was back then. When Heavenly Venerate Mu's treasure appeared, it cut off your path of retreat, making it impossible for you to escape. Yuanjun, think twice. The son of Black Tortoise only knows how to boast about his own treasure? Earth Mother Yuanjun could not help but laugh. She said with a smile. The #1 treasure in the world is not the Azure Sky Glazed Pavilion at all. The reason why your parents got the title of number one treasure was because the Heavenly Emperor, Heavenly Duke, Earth Count and I did not want to take out our own treasure at all. Just my main body's origin would alone can support all the worlds in the world, so it's far from what the Glazed Azure Heaven Stronghold can compare to. Your Glazed Azure Heaven Stronghold is only the 28 heavens. Martial Emperor Xian is a sacrificial god after all, so his horizons are shallow. You don't have any discerning eyes. Prince Yuming opened his mouth and sighed again. He didn't speak anymore. Qin Mu shook the Glazed Azure Heaven Stronghold in his hand lightly, and the 28 layers of canopy instantly opened with a hum. The 28 layers of heavens appeared and spun with a whistle. They expanded outward and soon enveloped the vast space of the ancestral court. The layers of heavens even cut open the earth, cutting off Earth Mother's path of retreat. Earth Mother Primordial Lord looked around and saw that the 28 heavens of the azure heaven-colored glass were filled with powerful treasures. These treasures were clearly not something that Emperor Xian and Martial Emperor could refine. The formation runes contained within were simply too powerful. Just as she had said, the azure heaven-colored glass of Emperor Xian and Emperor Wu had obtained the title of the number one treasure in the world back then. It was just that the Heavenly Emperor and the rest didn't want to show off. Both the Celestial Emperor and the Earth Count had powerful treasures. Even the treasures of the Empress were not weaker than the Azure Heaven Glazed Pavilion. And the Earth Mother Yuanjun was a powerful treasure. The Earth Mother Yuanjun had seen the Azure Heaven Glazed Pavilion back then. Although it was complicated and powerful, it was not as terrifying as it was now. Now the Azure Heaven Obelisk was filled with all sorts of treasures. These treasures were as numerous as the stars in the sky, and they covered every part of the heavens. It was obvious that a Supreme Grandmaster who was proficient in casting and array formations had spent a long time. The Azure Heaven Obelisk was refined to a level that it could never reach in the past. The Earth Mother Yuan Lord laughed coldly. She was not afraid at all. Although she had lost her physical body and even her roots had been taken away by Celestial Master Shao and Gong Sunli, she had the essence of wood. Even if her current abilities were inferior to Heavenly Venerate, they wouldn't be any weaker than existences like Tao Ancestor and Great Brahma. Even if Qin Mu took out the Glazed Azure Heaven Stronghold, even if he had the two existences of Emperor Thrones, Crown Prince Yuming and Wei Suifeng, she would still have a stable chance of victory. D. Earth Mother Primordial Lord let out a shrill cry as her true body appeared behind her. It was the core of Origin Wood. The core of Origin Wood was even more majestic and thick than when Earth Mother had first descended into the Origin world. The crown of this tree lifted up the layers of heavens in the Glazed Azure Heaven Stronghold, making them unable to change the sequence. Clearly, Mother Earth had studied the azure glazed sky canopy before. She knew that this treasure could respond to any request, and could change the order of the heavens at will. In the Yuan world, the Origin Wood lifted up the heavens, so he could easily freeze the heavens in the azure glazed sky canopy. The moment she appeared, she cut off the azure glazed sky canopy's ability. Mother Earth revealed her true form. Countless roots danced in the air as thick roots extended towards the various heavens. They invaded and headed towards the treasure scrolls hanging in the various heavens. She also had a natural advantage in how to break through the azure heaven glazed tiles. Her body trembled, and she flew past the layers of heavens to pounce on Qin Mu. She fixed the heavens, collected all the treasures, and killed Qin Mu in one go. Beside Qin Mu, Crown Prince Yuming bowed to Earth Mother Primordial Lord who was flying toward him. He then got up and took a step forward while roaring. Myriad forms of heavenly river. The heavenly river suddenly coiled around his body, and a heavenly palace flew out from behind him. It was surrounded by all kinds of small heavenly palaces. Ever since he came to eternal peace, his cultivation that had long stagnated began to advance by leaps and bounds. First, he was copied by Emperor Yanxiu's Ling Yuxiu in all the major academies, and then he went to Imperial College to further his studies. Next, he went to Daowen Academy in Earth Virtue Heavenly Palace to study and became a disciple of Siu to cultivate with him. He had too many shortcomings, but his aptitude and comprehension were definitely not bad. Otherwise, when Prince Yin Tianzi met him back then, he would not have lamented that if Prince Yuming had not been suppressed, he would definitely have become one of the 10 celestial masters. Although Prince Yuming had not completely filled his shortcomings, his cultivation base and strength were many times stronger than before. When he escaped, he met Prince Tianzi on the Heavenly River, and severely injured him with one punch. At that time his mana was extremely powerful, but now his strength was even stronger than before. His body was wrapped around the Heavenly River, and the Heavenly River was like a soaring snake. He had grasped Martial Emperor Xian's power and Abhijna in one move, and his great Abhijna erupted like the water of the Heavenly River. In an instant, the scene that flashed around the Heavenly River was like countless worlds where the Heavenly River flowed. Boom! The Earth Mother Yuan Lord clashed head-on with him, and her blood boiled. She could not help but praise in her heart. Crown Prince Yuming's mana is really powerful. It's a pity that he did not adapt to the situation. Bah! The Origin Wood roots whipped over and sent Prince Yuming flying. The Earth Mother Yuan Lord took a step forward and saw Wei Suifeng standing in front of her. He also bowed to her. Hypocrite! The Earth Mother Yuan Jun sneered and brazenly charged over. The sky above Wei Suifeng's head appeared, and the Heaven Do was hanging upside down. The Heavenly River flowed in the Heaven Do, and below the Heaven Do was his heavenly palace. His cultivation path was different from the others. He started from the Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures, and used the Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures to fuse various Emperor Throne techniques to comprehend his own Heaven Do Dao technique. The path he took was not to cultivate different heavenly palaces and gather together to form the heavenly court, but the path of Dao realm. After all, he was the disciple of Saint Woodcutter, the heaven-smelling pavilion. Among the 3 disciples of the heaven-smelling pavilion, he was the one who taught him the most diligently and for the longest time. When the founding emperor opened up the Dao realm, the heaven-smelling pavilion also taught him the Dao realm. If one looked closely at his Heaven Do, one could see that above the Heaven Do Heavenly River, there were many layers of Heaven Do and many heavenly rivers. Wei Suifeng let out a long howl and clashed head-on with the Earth Mother Yuan Jun. He immediately felt that he was no match for her and staggered back. Prince Yuming charged over. The 2 of them were one in front and one in the back. They were both peak Emperor realm existences in the world. One of them was famous for his powerful magic power, but his divine abilities were slightly inferior. The other was famous for his many divine abilities, but his magic power was slightly weaker. However, these 2 were existences that were on par with the 4 great heavenly masters and 4 colored emperors of the heavenly court. Even in the heavenly court, there were very few who were a match for them. Earth Mother Primordial Lord faced the 2 of them without the slightest fear. Even if the 2 great perfection emperors joined forces, they wouldn't be able to do anything to her. She closed in step by step, getting closer and closer to Qin Mu, who was under the jade pillars of the azure glass heaven canopy. Her Origin Wood had also completely frozen the 28 heavens of the azure glass heaven canopy, making them stagnate and unable to move. Her Origin Wood roots had also passed through the 28 heavens and coiled around the treasures. She now had 100% chance of victory. At that moment, under the jade pillars that supported the 28 heavens, Qin Mu bowed to Earth Mother Primordial Lord. Earth Mother Primordial Lord chuckled. Heavenly Venerate Mu, you're also a hypocrite. You're just a hypocrite. Qin Mu bowed and took a long breath. Suddenly, the heavenly palaces behind him burst forth, and they formed 19 heavenly palaces that joined together to form a huge heavenly court. In those heavenly palaces, primordial spirits stood erect and raised their heads to look at the 28 heavens. They all executed their magic power, and all the treasures in the 28 heavens were instantly activated by him. Yang! A huge bell rang out, and it instantly broke the roots of the Origin Wood that were twining around the bell. A building of 33 heavens shone brightly, and each layer revolved in a different direction. All kinds of formation markings burst forth from the building, turning into 33 different killing formations that crushed the roots of the Origin Wood. A zither danced in the air without anyone playing it. The sound of the zither cut through the roots of the Origin Wood like a hot knife through butter. The power of various treasures bloomed at this moment. In an instant, all the roots of the heavens were severed. All of a sudden, the power of all the treasures of the heavens bloomed at the same time. Countless patterns and chains appeared around these treasures, transforming into different divine abilities and killing arrays as they bombarded down at the same time. The Earth Mother Yuan Jun was shocked. She hurriedly forced Wei Suifeng and Crown Prince Yuming to retreat. When she raised her head to look, She immediately saw a scene that caused her to be incomparably shocked. The myriad of precious treasures in the 28 heavens gathered all their power and bombarded the essence wood core from all directions. It directly flattened the crown of this essence wood tree that she had painstakingly cultivated and strengthened, completely breaking its roots. Even the bark of the origin wood was stripped clean. The current origin wood had turned back into the core of origin wood, and had become a bare rod. Earth Mother Primordial Lord. The core of origin wood was given to me by you. Later on, I saw that you didn't have a body, so I gave this treasure to you. Qin Mu's voice sounded out and was rather indifferent. It clearly entered the ears of Earth Mother Primordial Lord. The Heavenly Duke came out and asked me to spare your life, so I spared yours as well. Logically speaking, the grudge between us has already been resolved. Speaking of which, I didn't kill you, so you should be thanking me for not killing you. But you've gone against me time and time again. In the 28 heavens, thousands of treasures moved and gathered at the top of the heavens. The treasures shone brightly. These treasures had their mouths facing down, the mouth of the cauldron facing down, the face of the zither facing down, and the base of the tower facing down. All of a sudden, the power of all the treasures erupted. This incomparably terrifying fluctuation blasted from the first heaven to the second heaven, gathering together with the power of the treasures from the second heaven to the third heaven, and then combined with the power of the treasures from the third heaven to the fourth heaven. Even just now, big senior brother, the crown prince, and I had tried to persuade you to put down your grudges and find great Brahma. However, you still refused to listen. Qin Mu executed azure heaven-colored glass indifferently, and the power of thousands of treasures gathered together to strike the top of the core of origin wood. The power was so great that it directly exploded the top of the core of origin wood, shattering it into pieces. It destroyed all of the inner structure of the origin wood and bombarded it all the way down. Earth Mother Primordial Lord shrieked and flew toward the core of origin wood. I've already done what I should have done, Qin Mu said with a calm expression. Crown Prince Yuming revealed a pained expression and suddenly said, Heavenly Venerate Mu has the virtue of living well. Earth Mother Primordial Lord, why don't you lower your head and admit defeat? Wei Suifeng also revealed a pained expression and said, Junior brother, Earth Mother Primordial Lord's crime doesn't deserve to die. Boom! The power of the azure heaven barrier bombarded down, and completely shattered the core of origin wood. Earth Mother Primordial Lord rushed over, and was sent flying by the surging power. Her corporeal body started to disintegrate and turned into ashes. Soon, only one divine soul was left, and her cultivation was also rapidly dissipating. At that moment, the power of the myriad treasures of the azure heaven stronghold was activated once again. Numerous chains of the treasures descended from the sky and locked down Earth Mother Primordial Lord's divine soul. Prince Yuming suddenly shouted out, Heavenly Venerate Mu, think twice. Earth Mother Primordial Lord has contributed to the origin world. But it has also brought disaster to the origin world. The primordial spirits in Qin Mu's heavenly palaces executed their magic power at the same time, and the power of all the treasures in the heavens came crashing down. They gathered into one wave and bombarded Earth Mother Primordial Lord's divine soul. High Emperor has been dead for 300,000 years, and countless lives have died. Earth Mother is definitely to blame. Qin Mu closed his eyes and he couldn't bear to watch this scene, so he simply didn't want to watch it. The power of the azure heaven canopy came crashing down, and came to the top of Earth Mother Primordial Lord's divine soul. Earth Mother Primordial Lord shrieked, Heavenly Venerate Mu, I admit defeat. On the face of Heavenly Duke, please remember that I have protected all the lives in the origin world for so many years. Boom! A wave of destruction came and completely drowned her divine soul. Terrifying power surged back and forth in the 28 heavens, turning into earth-shaking ripples that swept through all the heavens. Wei Suifeng and Crown Prince Yuming stood there, their clothes fluttering in the violent wind. Their hearts couldn't calm down for a long time. They saw Earth Mother Primordial Lord's soul black sand dancing in all the heavens, unable to gather together. Earth Mother Primordial Lord was still destroyed in body and soul. Heavenly Venerate Mu you. Crown Prince Yuming's expression was complicated. Qin Mu's expression was as calm as an ancient well. The one protecting the origin world is Earth Mother Primordial Lord, and the one who massacred the origin world is also Earth Mother Primordial Lord. She has done meritorious deeds, and she has done them before. We can't ignore her sins just because of her past meritorious deeds. I feel that I didn't do anything wrong. Wei Suifeng said, Junior brother, but you should know that when the future generations mention the matter of you killing Earth Mother Primordial Lord, there will definitely be many people saying that you are ruthless and incomparably vicious, not giving Earth Mother a chance. Qin Mu grabbed the jade pillar of the Azure Heaven stronghold. He was expressionless. Right and wrong, merits and demerits, leave it for future generations to comment on. However, future generations are usually a bunch of mediocre people who have the heart of a saint mother but don't have the ability of a saint mother. They only know how to talk but don't have the ability. Zheng. The 28 heavens gathered together and turned into layers of canopy, keeping all the treasures inside. He leaned against the azure sky canopy and his face was covered by the canopy's shadow, only revealing his thin lips. He pursed his thin lips and said softly, A mere vulgar person, what right do you have to criticize me? You can't kill your enemies by criticizing rumors, and you can't rule the world. You can only kill righteous people. But I'm no longer afraid. Rumors are terrifying. Rumors are like arrows. They can shoot people to death. Wei Suifeng was more mature after all. He whispered to Prince Yuming, Crown Prince, it's best not to tell anyone about this. I know that you are grateful for the death of Earth Mother. And I know that you understand Celestial Master Mu's intentions and his actions. However, in the future when the world is at peace, there will be even more people criticizing Celestial Master Mu. In the end, his reputation will be tarnished. It's best to hide this matter from the world. Crown Prince Yuming hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Qin Mu shook his head. Eldest senior brother, it can't be hidden. There are traces of our battle here, as well as Long Xiao, Chong Tianfei, Celestial Master Gong, and Divine Emperor Lang Xian. How can they not tell anyone? There's no need to be so nervous. I did it, so why should I be afraid of others talking about it? Wei Suifeng frowned. Even though that was the case, when the actions of heroes weren't understood by others and when the mindset of the later generations wasn't in line with the times of war, they would still comment on the predecessors and criticize the actions of the predecessors. The radiance of the seniors was too dazzling, but the more dazzling a person was, the clearer the stain on their body would be. Even if it was just an insignificant stain, it would be magnified like a fly discovering the wound on a brave warrior. They would have to hum and lick it twice. Wei Suifeng had seen too much of such a situation. Crown Prince Yuming had experienced too little of the world, so he didn't understand why such a situation would occur. Qin Mu didn't care about it, but Wei Suifeng felt wronged on Qin Mu's behalf. The battle of Heavenly Venerate is already coming to an end, right? Qin Mu came to the highest divine mountain nearby, and climbed up to look into the distance. Crown Prince Yuming and Wei Suifeng came to his side, and the three of them looked into the distance. Over there, Heavenly Venerate Gong, Divine Emperor Lang Xian, Qi Tianfei, and Long Xiao were still fighting fiercely. Originally, Qi Tianfei had been at a disadvantage, but with the help of Supreme Emperor's head and fist, she instantly gained the upper hand. Under the sudden attack, she beat Heavenly Venerate Gong, Long Xiao, and Divine Emperor Lang Xian until they vomited blood. Even though Supreme Emperor's head didn't have much power and had been worn down by Qin Mu until there wasn't much left of his cultivation, which was only equivalent to an existence on Emperor Throne Realm, his divine consciousness was strong. His fist was also the only remaining limb of Supreme Emperor's corporeal body and wasn't visualized, so its power was extremely strong. However, Qing Tianfei quickly suffered a huge loss. She was targeted by Celestial Venerables Long Xiao and Divine Emperor Lang Xian, and the three Celestial Venerables attacked her together, causing her to be heavily injured again. Thus a strange situation was formed. Whoever was stronger and had less injuries would be attacked by the others together. However, the result would be 4 defeats and everyone would be injured. In the end, no one would be able to obtain the final victory. Is it possible for us to pick up the scraps? Wei Suifeng's heart pounded wildly as he muttered. If the 4 of them are all injured and have little strength left, can the 3 of yous join hands to get rid of them? When he said that, Prince Yoming's heart couldn't help pounding wildly as his Dao heart became unstable. Qin Mu shook his head. If all 4 of us are injured, the final winner will be Long Xiao. Celestial Master Lang Xian and Heaven Consort of Palace are both figures who have lived since the immemorial era, so they won't give Long Xiao such a chance. Wei Suifeng was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood what he meant. Crown Prince Yuming still didn't understand. This is the back of the ancestral court, Wei Suifeng explained. Even if Long Xiao is injured, there are still countless huge beasts at his command. If Heavenly Venerate Palace's injuries are too severe, Long Xiao can control the huge primordial beasts to attack them. Even if he grinds them to death, he can still grind them to death. Prince Yuming came to a realization. 10th Heavenly Venerate is incomparably astute. He wouldn't allow himself to fall into such a situation. However, he still fell into it. Wei Suifeng glanced at Qin Mu and said, Supreme Emperor and Heavenly Venerate Vast had both suffered heavy losses, so they were taken advantage of. I heard that junior brother had once chased Heavenly Venerate Vast for 600,000 miles, killing him to the point that he couldn't even scream in pain. Qin Mu felt very comfortable in his heart. Actually, you can't blame Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven. At that time he was fighting with the life of Supreme Emperor who had just resurrected, so he had no choice but to unleash all of his power. If he won, who would dare to go against him with the might of Supreme Emperor? Even 10 Heavenly Venerates would submit to him and wouldn't dare to have any second thoughts, so his position would be stable. Wei Suifeng asked, what about the ancestral court refining the head of Supreme Emperor? That's because Supreme Emperor was crushed by 4th Heavenly Venerate. Not to mention that Supreme Emperor wasn't in his peak state. Even if he was in his peak state, he would still be crushed by 4th Heavenly Venerate. If he hadn't escaped quickly, not even his head would have been left.
Qin Mu smiled.
Picking up scraps won't be that easy. As he was speaking, a few violent ripples suddenly came over. Long Xiao was heavily injured and rose into the sky to run away. His injuries were very serious. 7 of his 9 heads and necks had been broken, and he drooped down weakly. The dragon scales on his body were almost completely shattered, so he had no choice but to escape. If he continued to fight, his origin would be injured. Just as he escaped, Princess Qitian suddenly giggled and left Celestial Venerable Gong and Divine Emperor Lang Xian behind. She flew into the distance, and her figure rose higher and higher. She then formed a reverse summoning altar in the sky. Qin Mu's expression sank slightly. For concubine Gao Tian to be able to learn the reverse summoning divine art, it was definitely due to Shu Jun and the Dragon Qilin. Shu Jun was carrying the huge seal that Qin Mu had used to suppress Supreme Emperor's head, and was affected by Supreme Emperor's divine consciousness. When the Dragon Qilin had taught Shu Jun the reverse summoning divine art, Supreme Emperor had learned it. Please don't expose my identity. Concubine Gao Tian rose higher and higher and the reverse summoning sacrificial altar was activated. Pulling her body to the front of the ancestral court, a tender laughter came from the sky. Because if you expose my identity, I will expose yours too. Heavenly Venerate Hao would be happy to kill his half-brother, and the ancient gods would be happy to kill the fish that escaped from the Creator's net. You can talk to each other slowly. Heavenly Venerate Gong and Divine Emperor Longshuan's expressions changed slightly. However, what concubine Chang Tian said was already common to them. Who among the 10 Heavenly Venerates did not have some unspeakable secrets? None of the 10 Celestial Masters were innocent, including Fire Celestial Master and Heavenly Master Hao. Everyone had secrets. Even if they knew each other's secrets, they could still use it as a threat. They did not have to reveal it. Celestial Master Gong and Divine Emperor Lang Xian stopped their attacks and looked at each other with complicated expressions. Mother, I have always hated you for being the creator. Divine Emperor Lang Xian retreated while runes flew around his body. He was also using the reverse summoning divine art. He didn't learn the reverse summoning divine art from Qin Mu, but he had obtained it from Earth Mother Primordial Lord and deduced it himself. If you weren't a creator, the Heavenly Emperor wouldn't have killed you, and I wouldn't be an illegitimate child. His reverse summoning divine art was slightly different from Qin Mu's, but it was also extremely mystical. His runes formed a path chain, and it was like countless white goose feathers drowning him. Even though I knew that I had an incomparably noble identity in my life, because of your identity, I had no choice but to conceal my identity. Because I was exposed, I could only die. Divine Emperor Longshuan's figure vanished, but his voice remained. I should have been the crown prince, and the world should have been mine. Heavenly Venerate Haotian Xiaowuqi, all of them are younger brothers, and I'm the only legitimate crown prince. Because of you, I could only conceal my identity and become an illegitimate child. Heavenly Venerate Gong was silent. She watched him leave and did not stop him. I really shouldn't have given birth to you. She flicked her sleeves and also conjured a divine ability in reverse and left from the back of the ancestral court. She returned to the 100,000 Black Mountain, and saw that the sand in the hourglass had not yet finished falling. Heavenly Venerate Gong put away the hourglass and floated far away under the gazes of Lan Yuqian, Su Shanghua, and the others. Wish Interstellar Rain happy birthday. Qin Mu and the rest watched the battle of heavenly venerates from afar as they fell into deep thought. The back of the ancestral court is about to become the backyard of the three heavenly venerates. Prince Yuming said. The three of them have learned the reverse summoning divine art, so they can come and go as they please. Soon Long Xiao wouldn't be able to defend this place. I'm afraid that not only will he be unable to defend this place, but Long Xiao might even be captured and become a mount. Wei Suifeng's eyes flickered, he said. The three celestial venerables have the ability to come and go as they please. This time they are injured, but the next time they come back, whoever recovers first will be able to subdue Long Xiao and unify the back of the ancestral court. However, based on the personalities of the three celestial venerables, they must be worried that the other celestial venerables will recover before them and subdue Long Xiao. Then, the first thing they will do when they go back, with a strange expression he said, is to spread the news about the back of the ancestral court to the other celestial venerables, so that no one can get the back of the ancestral court, and no one can subdue Long Xiao. He had seen through these three celestial venerables and understood their thoughts. Since there was one person who could gain the greatest benefits, and his strength and power would increase greatly, the probability of this person being him was only 1/3. There was a 2/3 chance that he would lose his power and be killed by the person who had the greatest benefits. In that case, he might as well leak the matter out. If he did, he would definitely get 1/10 of the benefits. This was the best choice. As for Long Xiao, he only had one path, and that was to be killed by the 10th heavenly venerate. There were only 10 portions of the benefits, and the 10th heavenly venerate would not share them with outsiders. However, Long Xiao could not be divided into 10 portions. Therefore, Long Xiao who died was the best Long Xiao, and it was best for no one to get it. The Yuming Crown Prince could not understand the twists and turns of the situation. He said in a muffled voice, if the three celestial venerables were divided into 3 portions, wouldn't the benefits be greater? Because their conflicts cannot be reconciled, but the conflicts between the 10 celestial venerables can be reconciled. They have been compromising with each other since the Long Han era. They are both competitors and a community of common interests. Wei Suifeng sighed ruefully. Crown Prince, you should really be thankful that North Emperor suppressed you for 600,000 years. Otherwise, who knows how many times you would have died in these 600,000 years. Prince Yuming smiled. I know I'm very stupid, so I have to ask you smart people for advice. In the past, Emperor Yin and the rest schemed against me and never taught me how to analyze the pros and cons. However, you guys are my friends and will teach me these. Wei Suifeng looked at Qin Mu and probed. Then what should Heavenly Venerate Mu, who isn't among the 10 Heavenly Venerates, do in the face of this situation? Find Long Xiao before he is killed by the 10 Heavenly Venerates. Qin Mu smiled and said. Then tell him exactly what you said just now. Let him know that he can't rely on any one of the 10 Heavenly Venerates and can only ally with me. Wei Suifeng laughed loudly, but his laughter suddenly stopped. He changed the topic. However, Long Xiao is obstinate and willful. He is the ruler of the back of the ancestral court and rules over all the huge beasts here. He will harbor illusions and think that he can rely on a heavenly venerate even in the most dangerous moment and still maintain his position. If you go and look for him, you will be walking into a trap.
Qin Mu smiled.
Everything depends on man. As long as there's a glimmer of hope for success, I will do it. Wei Suifeng was stunned and sighed. This is why I'm inferior to you. If you think there's a glimmer of hope, you will work hard and strive to turn it into 2 or 3 threads, but I will often give up. Qin Mu imparted the reverse summoning divine art to them and said, "There's South Heaven Gate here. Bring Granny Hua Xuanqiu Lan Yutian, Su Shanghua and the rest over and study them in detail. I'll go look for Long Shao." Wei Suifeng hesitated for a moment and said, "Be careful along the way." Qin Mu laughed and stuffed the Azure Heaven stronghold into his hand before floating away. "Don't worry, Long Shao is heavily injured now, so he can't do anything to me." Wei Suifeng and Prince Yuming watched him leave while Prince Yuming said sincerely, "Heavenly Venerate Mu is truly an extraordinary person. Heavenly Venerate Nine Dragons Han is an extraordinary person. They have ambitions, pursuits, and their own ideals, which is why they can do extraordinary things and become extraordinary people." Wei Suifeng used the reverse summoning divine ability and said in a deep voice, "We summon Shujun Lan Yutian and see you. There's no need to return to the 100,000 sacred mountains." Prince Yuming hesitated and said, "You also said the 100,000 sacred mountains, but when I look at the 100,000 black mountains they don't look like sacred mountains. Instead, they look like extremely dangerous places. They always give me a bad feeling. If Heavenly Venerate Mu said they were sacred mountains, then they are sacred mountains. If the sky falls, Heavenly Venerate Mu will take care of it." "That's true." Qin Mu followed Long Xiao's trail and searched all the way. Long Xiao was injured and left behind traces of blood. However, he didn't search far before the traces of blood disappeared. It was probably Long Xiao suppressing his injuries to prevent others from finding his tracks. Qin Mu muttered to himself for a moment before a huge beast in the distance discovered him and rushed towards him with a roar. His divine consciousness burst forth and branded itself into the huge beast's mind. After a moment, Qin Mu stood on the head of the huge beast and searched for Long Xiao's whereabouts from its memories. He then controlled the huge beast to rush over there. Not long after, he found that the huge beast had lost Long Xiao's trail. However, there were other huge beasts not far away. Qin Mu immediately changed to another huge beast and left the original huge beast there. He searched all the way, stopping and walking. However, Long Xiao's movements became more and more mysterious. In the end, Qin Mu even changed to a few huge beasts, but he still couldn't find any traces of Long Xiao. Long Xiao is also cautious. Qin Mu jumped down from the huge beast's forehead and gave a light laugh. He raised a finger and gently tapped on an ancient tree. "May I ask if Your Excellency has found Long Xiao?" The ancient tree was summoned by him and instantly regained its consciousness. Its roots rose from the ground and it stood up. Eyes and mouth grew out from its body. It raised a branch and pointed into the distance. He went there. Qin Mu thanked it and got up to leave. The spirit tree raised its hand and scratched the crown of the tree. It was a little puzzled. It didn't know why it could suddenly speak and walk while basking in the sun. Qin Mu's divine art was extraordinary. It was no longer a simple spirit summoning spell of true heaven palace. He could also use the divine art of heavenly world to bestow his soul and divine consciousness to bestow him with the ability to speak. His divine art was filled with profundities. In terms of the power of the divine arts in the world, there were many that surpassed Qin Mu. However, in terms of ingenuity, other than being too easy and unfathomable, no one could be ranked above Qin Mu. He searched for a long time and once again lost the trail of Long Xiao. In front of him was a sea of thousands of acres of spirit flowers, and countless flowers that were over 10 yards tall swayed in the wind. Qin Mu's feet stomped heavily on the ground, and instantly thousands of acres of spirit flowers swayed. Among the flowers, young and beautiful girls yawned and stretched their waists from the flower room, poking their heads out to look around. Qin Mu asked, "Sisters, have you discovered Long Xiao?" The girls were chattering and Qin Mu coughed and said, "Please point the way." The girls all pointed in the same direction, and Qin Mu thanked them and chased after them. "Ja, I'm not wearing any clothes." A girl in the flower cried out in shock. "Me too. We're not wearing any clothes. We've been seen naked. Why are your breasts bigger than mine? And your butt is a little perky. So ugly it's a hindrance to walk." The sea of flowers was bustling with activity. Those girls sneaked out from the flowers and looked around for leaves. They cut the leaves into various beautiful clothes and decorated them with flower petals. They laughed at the girl with big breasts again, and cheerful laughter came from the sea of flowers. Celestial Master Gong returned to the Taisu Lode and summoned his disciple, Nian Sihua, to guard the place. He said, I have a reverse summoning great divine ability here. Send it to the territories of the other celestial masters, and tell them that they can use this divine ability to reach the back of the ancestral court. There are countless riches in the back of the ancestral court. Nian Sihua was shocked. She quickly said, Master, since there are great treasures in the back of the ancestral court, why do you want to share them with others? The other heavenly venerates are all fierce people. They want to take all the benefits for themselves. Why did you share them with us? Celestial Master Gong said indifferently, the benefits that they can't take will also be shared with us. When they occupied the heavenly court, it wasn't because they were worried that they couldn't take it, so they looked for allies and found me. Did they invite me to join the Heavenly Alliance? There's no need to ask. Go quickly. Nian Sihua rolled her eyes and said, Heavenly Venerate Mu is also a Heavenly Venerate. Should I inform him? Heavenly Venerate Gong shook his head and said, No need. Nian Sihua was delighted and said with a smile, If we split the benefits with Heavenly Venerate Mu, we will have to split it into 11 portions. If he is one less person, we can split it more. Then you are wrong. We must split it with Heavenly Venerate Mu. Heavenly Master Gong shook his head and said, He has a portion in the front of the ancestral court. Furthermore, he created the reverse summoning divine ability. Naturally, we have to give him a portion as well. Although the 10 heavenly masters are of the same mind, they are also mutually restricted. We need to let the catfish Heavenly Master Mu in to lubricate ourselves. Nian Sihua was very puzzled. Heavenly Master Gong said calmly, He is the leader of the Heaven Alliance. There are many things that need to be done in his name. There are some shady things in the Heaven Alliance and someone has to take the blame. Moreover, I don't have any allies. I need an ally in the Heaven Alliance. Pulling Celestial Master Mu into the Heaven Alliance and becoming the 11th Celestial Master among the 10 Celestial Masters, and using him to restrict Heavenly Master Hao and the others is not only my idea, but also the idea of the other Celestial Masters. Nian Sihua shivered. She did not dare to guess what the Celestial Master was thinking. Although she was in the throne realm, the 10 Celestial Masters were like a dark abyss to her. They were unfathomable. Founding Emperor can't be recruited into the 10 Celestial Masters, but Celestial Master Mu should be able to. Celestial Master Gong said unhurriedly, Founding Emperor seems to be gentle and honest. He doesn't have much of a temper, but his Tao heart is too stable. If he decides on one thing, he will never change his mind. However, Celestial Master Mu is different. Celestial Master Mu is more changeable and has the possibility of being changed. You can go. Nian Sihua bowed and left. Celestial Master Gong looked at the Tai Su load and his eyes flashed. He said in a low voice, Moreover, my identity as the Creator's Divine King has always been a hidden danger. With this identity, it's difficult to find allies. Celestial Master Mu doesn't make me completely at ease. He's too close to the ancient god. She moved her gaze away and looked at the ancestral court. This was the territory of the Creator, but she couldn't find him. The Creator's two enemies were Supreme Emperor and Ancient God. Among the 10 heavenly venerates, Heavenly Venerate Fire was the most eager to get rid of the ancient gods. But that was just a pretense for Heavenly Venerate Fire to get rid of his enemies and strengthen himself. Only she was the one who truly wanted to exterminate the ancient gods. The 10 heavenly venerables of the Heaven Alliance were what she relied on. On the back of the ancestral court, Qin Mu was searching all the way when he suddenly raised his head and saw 2 towering mountains in front of him. They looked like a heaven gate, and it was none other than South Heaven Gate. Long Shao shouldn't be too far away. Since I'm here, I might as well take a look at South Heaven Gate. He looked up at the gate that was naturally formed by the heaven and earth. It was the South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court, and it was many times more majestic than the South Heaven Gate of the heaven court. The 2 mountains were filled with Tao flames, which were constructed from Tao markings. Each Tao flame had a different texture of the great Tao. If Tao ancestor was here, I'm afraid it wouldn't take long for me to analyze these Tao flames and comprehend many runes from them. Qin Mu walked into the South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court, and the Tao flames reached his body. These Tao flames were very strange, and when they touched him, they didn't have any warmth. Even his clothes and hair didn't ignite. Qin Mu let out a gasp of surprise and passed through South Heaven Gate. Nothing happened. He retreated back and sized up the gate while muttering to himself. Suddenly, his primordial spirit left his body and walked toward South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court. He wanted to try passing through South Heaven Gate purely with his primordial spirit, without using his corporeal body. At the instant his primordial spirit stepped into South Heaven Gate, he suddenly heard a loud bang that shook like a huge bell. An incomparably loud Tao voice immediately rang out in Qin Mu's primordial spirit's ears. It was so grand that it made him feel as if he had entered the door of Tao, bringing an incomparable impact to his Tao heart. No wonder no one in ancient times could discover the secrets of the 4 great heaven gates, because the creator of that era didn't have a primordial spirit at all. He came to a sudden realization, and at that moment, he felt the power of the pathfire of South Heaven Gate. The pathfire invaded his primordial spirit and burned it from all directions, even entering his divine consciousness and vital qi. It was the great Tao runes that he had refined. This was a form of tempering. There was the danger of his primordial spirit being turned into ashes by the pathfire, but he would also receive the tempering of South Heaven Gate and take another step forward. He allowed the pathfire to burn him as he continued to walk forward. He could hear the miraculous Tao sound in his ears. Qin Mu slowed down his footsteps and allowed the pathfire to refine his body. Unknowingly, he had many feelings and insights. As he went deeper, the wonderful feelings brought by the Tao sound grew more and more. However, the deeper he went, the stronger the power of the Tao fire became. It faintly began to threaten the safety of his primordial spirit. Of course, the Tao fire with such power could no longer hurt him, but it made Qin Mu have a feeling that his foundation was unstable. This kind of unstable foundation came from the realm of South Heaven Gate in the Heavenly Palace system. The realm of South Heaven Gate was also called True God. It was a divine arts practitioner who had come to the front of South Heaven Gate and walked through it. After going through the great Tao laws of South Heaven Gate and tempering himself, his primordial spirit and corporeal body, they were all raised to the level of True God. This kind of tempering was mostly reflected in strength. Qin Mu had also passed through South Heaven Gate. It wasn't just one gate, but almost all of South Heaven Gate's heavenly palaces. Only Buddha Pirate Heavenly Palace had yet to be completed, and Extreme Load Heavenly Palace had just started cultivating, so he had yet to pass through. But now that he had walked through South Heaven Gate formed by the heaven and earth of the ancestral court, he realized that he was being burned by the Tao flames, and his realm was showing signs of instability. He had never encountered such a thing as unstable realm. Ever since he was young, his foundation of realm could be said to be incomparably firm, especially after coming into contact with Eternal Peace's reform and reforming all the great divine treasures. With unstable realm, he was even more insulated from it. When he crippled his heavenly palace, crippled his divine treasures, and only cultivated his spirit embryo, his heavenly palace realm also became a part of his spirit embryo realm. The reverent gods and true gods of heavenly palace were all trained by him to an unimaginable degree. If his realm was unstable, then all the gods in the world had unstable realms. This is a chance for me to attain the great perfection of South Heaven Gate. He focused all his attention on comprehending the Tao flames around him, listening to the Tao sounds, and comprehending the profoundness of South Heaven Gate with all his heart. At that moment, 2 huge eyes suddenly appeared in the sky above South Heaven Gate. They hid behind the clouds and stared at Qin Mu's primordial spirit, which was comprehending in South Heaven Gate. They then shifted their gaze and landed on Qin Mu's corporeal body. In the sky, a long dragon's beard fell down silently and quietly wrapped around Qin Mu's corporeal body before slowly putting it away. However, Qin Mu's primordial spirit in South Heaven Gate still seemed to be unaware. "I'm waiting for you to beg me to become my mount." A low laugh came from the sky, and the 2 eyes disappeared. The realm of South Heaven Gate is built on the foundation of South Heaven Gate of the Heavenly Court. The South Heaven Gate of the Heavenly Court symbolizes the authority of the Heavenly Emperor, the majesty of the gods, and the power of the gods. Therefore, the traditional Heavenly Palace realm only focuses on strength and lacks comprehension of the path. Qin Mu's primordial spirit stopped and pondered over the reason while comprehending. In other words, the instability of the realm will appear on all the gods and devils that are built on the foundation of the traditional Heavenly Palace system without any exception. That's because when they pass through South Heaven Gate, They only obtained strength and didn't comprehend the path. This is also the reason why when founding emperor cleaved apart the heavenly court, the Tao hearts of all the gods and devils almost cracked and collapsed. This included Qinmu, founding emperor himself, and even 10 heavenly venerables. If founding emperor wants to become the path, if he wants to cultivate the 36th heavens of sword path, if he wants sword path to rest in the ultimate void, he has to make a trip to the 4 great heavenly gates of the ancestral court, Jade Lake, Jade Platform, Jade Capital City, and other places. Only by doing so will his comprehension of the Tao reach its peak. Founding emperor's path of sword proving the void is in the ancestral court. He continued to move forward, trying his best to comprehend. Qinmu moved forward unhurriedly. Even though the Tao fire was strong, it was difficult to hurt him. The Tao sounds in Heavenly Gate made his Tao heart even more transparent. This isn't South Heaven Gate, but the gate to enter the Tao. If someone can walk through this gate, they will most likely be able to enter the Tao. He sighed ruefully in his heart. There was actually such a wondrous place in the world. However, the power of the path fire of this gate to enter the path could probably burn most of the true gods to death. Qinmu frowned slightly. The fiercest path fire wasn't directed at the corporeal body, vital qi, primordial spirit, and divine consciousness. It was also not directed at the divine treasures and heavenly palaces, but at the Tao heart. If the cultivation of the Tao heart wasn't high enough, it would be completely burned by the path fire of South Heaven Gate, leaving nothing behind. I have to tell eldest senior brother, Crown Prince Yuming, and the rest not to walk straight into South Heaven Gate. The best path is to analyze the Tao fire here, and complete the South Heaven Gate in their respective heavenly palaces. That way there's a possibility of entering the Tao, but the probability is smaller. However, it's much bigger than the South Heaven Gate in the past, and it's safer. He walked past the ancestral court's South Heaven Gate. When he walked out of the gate formed by heaven and earth, it was already several days later, but he had yet to enter the Tao. Even though the enlightenment that South Heaven Gate of the ancestral court had given him was deep, Qinmu had already stepped into the path long ago. Furthermore, his realm was very deep. So the enlightenment that South Heaven Gate had given him wasn't enough to support him to step into the path once again, and allow his Tao realm to rise to another level. I have to go to the other 3 heaven gates. The enlightenment that those 3 heaven gates have given me on Tao heart and great Tao is enough to make me have no weakness in this realm. His primordial spirit walked out of the South Heaven Gate and turned back. He passed through the gate once again, intending to return to his physical body. His primordial spirit came to the gate entrance and was immediately stunned. He saw that the front of the South Heaven Gate was empty, and his physical body had actually disappeared. He had been meditating in the South Heaven Gate all this time, and his mind was unoccupied. He did not expect that his physical body had actually been lost. I've been walking by the river and finally got my shoes wet. I've made a low-level mistake. What kind of huge beast could break through the divine art seal and take away my corporeal body? He sensed his corporeal body but found that it was still there and hadn't been eaten by the huge beast. Only then did he relax. At that moment, Prince Yuming supported himself with the azure glass heaven canopy and escorted everyone from the Great Black Mountain. When they saw Qinmu's primordial spirit, they couldn't help being astonished and went forward to ask.
Grannisi frowned.
Muir, where's your corporeal body? Don't mention it. Qinmu said in embarrassment. I followed Long Shao here and planned to have my primordial spirit enter to comprehend the profoundness, but I never expected my corporeal body to be stolen. I already know who stole my corporeal body, so I'll rush over to take it back. Wei Suifeng's heart moved slightly, and he asked in a low voice, It's Long Shao.
Qinmu nodded.
He took my corporeal body so that I could be his mount. I'll go and meet him, and nothing will happen. He told everyone about the various discoveries in South Heaven Gate of the Ancestral Court. If your abilities are sufficient, you can try to enter with your primordial spirit if you're just a step behind me in True God Realm. However, if you're much weaker than me, don't go in and throw your lives away, he said. The moment these words were said, many people were eager to give it a try. Qinmu glanced at Yu Chudu and Wei Suifeng and shook his head. You guys can't do it, you guys are far from it. Wei Suifeng gave a snort and was very unhappy. Qin Mu looked at first ancestor, second ancestor, and the other human emperors and shook his head. You guys can't do it either. Everyone was used to being struck and thought to themselves, that great cult master Wei doesn't seem to be used to it yet, but he will get used to it. Qin Mu said to Su Shanghua and Lan Yutian, you guys can go in. Prince Yuming, Granny, you guys can go in. If you feel that something is wrong and immediately retreat, you guys are also far from each other. Hua Xuanxiu, you are still too young and on the realm of divine treasures. Your primordial spirit is unstable, so stay outside obediently. Where's Long Pai? Where's Pai? He looked around but didn't find Long Pai. He was bewildered. Fatty Long didn't go back. Wei Suifeng said. When I summoned everyone, I didn't find any traces of him, so I didn't even summon Yenner over to prevent her from worrying. Qin Mu's heart sank. When he had fought with Earth Mother Primordial Lord, he had let the Dragon Qilin leave first, but he hadn't expected the Dragon Qilin to not return to the Great Black Mountain of the Ancestral Court. After I find my corporeal body, I'll go look for him. Qin Mu's heart was anxious, and he suddenly grew up, and his primordial spirit vanished. His primordial spirit traveled 10,000 miles and sensed his body. Not long after, it left the South Heaven Gate of the Ancestral Court and came to a strange place. The mountains here were forested, and they were as steep as knives. They were dense and sinister, like thorns that grew on the ground. They were incomparably sharp and stabbed diagonally into the sky. His primordial spirit passed through the strange mountains, and he suddenly felt waves of strange power stabbing into his primordial spirit, causing it to slow down. Qin Mu executed his divine art, and the great Tao runes flew out to form Tao patterns. They formed Tao chains, but the circulation of the Tao chains became sluggish. The strange power that pervaded the area stabbed into his Tao chains, Tao patterns and great Tao runes. It made it almost impossible for the divine art to take shape. His primordial spirit flew slower and slower, and he finally couldn't mobilize his magic power anymore. His primordial spirit fell from the sky. Qin Mu took a step forward and ran at full speed. His speed was still extremely fast, but the deeper he went into this strange mountain, the stronger the suppression he felt. What is this place? Just as he thought of this, his primordial spirit and corporeal body suddenly felt an incomparably strong connection. Shua. His primordial spirit vanished into his corporeal body. Qin Mu opened his eyes and laughed. Long Xiao, why are you sneaking around and stealing my corporeal body? At that moment, Qin Mu felt his neck becoming heavy. He saw a chain made of divine gold being tied around his neck, and Long Xiao, who had shrunk to more than 30 yards in length, was lying on the throne like a thorny thorn and sleeping soundly. Beside Long Xiao, the Dragon Qilin was refining medicine for Long Xiao to treat his injuries. He said in a low voice, Foster Father, Heavenly Venerate Mu has arrived. Long Xiao slowly opened his eyes and yawned. He smiled. Don't call him Heavenly Venerate Mu. Call him Mount Heavenly Venerate Mu. Qin Mu's eyes went wide as he looked at the Dragon Qilin's godfather, and Long Xiao's godson on the throne. A bizarre feeling rose in his heart. He had been worried that the Dragon Qilin might have been eaten by that huge beast, but he hadn't expected the Dragon Qilin to be captured by Long Xiao and taken in as his godson. Furthermore, looking at the situation, the Dragon Qilin was actually doing quite well by Long Xiao's side. With a buzz, Qin Mu spread out the domain of his divine treasure and executed the path of primordial beginning, causing the chains around his neck to fall off. Long Xiao raised his head abruptly and stared at Qin Mu with 18 eyes. You can resist the rules of this place and execute divine arts? Qin Mu stretched his body and looked around. This place forms a natural shackle of great Tao, which is specially used to lock down the path. There aren't many great Tao paths that I can use, so I can only use 4. Long Xiao was bewildered, and after a moment, he laughed loudly. Amazing, truly amazing. No wonder you are revered as Heavenly Venerate Mu. I originally thought you were a piece of trash used by Heavenly Venerates to make up the numbers, but I didn't expect you to really have some ability. He stood up and walked down from his throne. In a few steps he came to Qin Mu's side. His long body circled around Qin Mu a few times, and 7 of his 9 heads and necks were broken. Even though he had the Dragon Qilin to heal him, he had yet to fully recover. He sized Qinmu up like he was looking at an animal and praised, "Truly amazing. Your cultivation isn't high, but your abilities are truly extraordinary." He returned to the throne. The throne should have been refined by the thorn mountains here and was like a thorny forest, but it couldn't hurt him in the slightest. Qinmu took a glance at the dragon Qilin and smiled. "Long Xiao, your foster son is really unique. Half is a dragon and the other half is a Qilin." The dragon Qilin shouted, "My mount is Celestial Venerable Mu, so that you can know that my surname is Long and my name is Pai. You can call me Young Master Pai. When I was running, I executed my divine art and was seen by a few good brothers who were running away. They picked me up and ran away without any explanation. Later my foster father came and felt that I was clever and intelligent, so he took me in as his foster son." Qinmu blinked his eyes and instantly knew the whole story. In the battle with Wei Suifeng and Crown Prince Yuming when he had killed Earth Mother Primordial Lord, the area covered by the azure heaven-glazed building was too wide. The dragon Qilin and the nearby huge beasts were all escaping to avoid being affected by them. The dragon Qilin was probably still trying to execute his reverse summoning divine art to summon himself to the great black mountain of the ancestral court, but he was discovered by the other huge beasts that were escaping. The behemoths thought that the dragon Qilin was a behemoth like them. Seeing that he was not running fast enough, they held the dragon Qilin in their mouths and fled for their lives. The dragon Qilin was unable to use his reverse summoning divine ability. When he reached a safe distance, he ran into Long Xiao who was escaping. Long Xiao picked them up and fled all the way to this place. Although the dragon Qilin's medical skills were a mess, he was still much better than the behemoths. Therefore, he tried his best to treat Long Xiao's injuries. Long Xiao must have liked him a lot, seeing that he was smart and capable. Hence, he took him in as his foster son. Long Xiao laughed out loud. "Heavenly Venerate Mu, do you know what this place is?" "This place is called Qishan. In the past, creators called it Heaven Prison and Nine Prison Stage. In the past, creators and ancient gods who committed heinous crimes were often thrown here. In this place, not to mention you, even ancient gods would become mortals. Every step they took would cause their bodies to sting and wail in pain. In the end, you would be distorted beyond recognition and die a horrible death." "Qi Mountain, Heaven Prison?" Qinmu was stunned. He looked around and muttered, "There's also Heaven Prison in Heaven Court, but it's not that terrifying. If Heaven Prison also corresponds to one realm, then which of the 7 realms of Heaven Palace should it correspond to?" Long Xiao glanced at him. "This is only the outer layer of Heaven Prison, the first stage of 9 prisons stage. If you reach the 9th prison, not to mention that you are unable to use your divine arts, even if the so-called 10 heavenly venerates come, they will only die. There are at least dozens of skeletons of ancient gods there. Submit to me and become my mount. You have boundless glory in the back of the ancestral court. Reject me, and I will throw you into the 9th prison to let you have a taste of a life worse than death."
Qinmu laughed loudly.
"Long Xiao, you are already at the end of your life, yet you are still dreaming." He repeated Wei Suifeng's analysis and said indifferently, "You only have one way to live now, and that is to join hands with me. Otherwise, when the 10th heavenly venerate descends, you will definitely die." Long Xiao snorted coldly. "If I join hands with one of the heavenly venerates, I can be free and unfettered. How can there be any danger to my life? If you submit to one of the heavenly venerables, the other 9 heavenly venerables will be greatly threatened. In order to protect the balance of power between the heavenly venerables, you will definitely be killed."
Qinmu smiled.
"Long Xiao, I've already invited you twice, so I won't invite you a 3rd time." Long Xiao raised his dragon claws and lightly knocked on the throne. His 9 faces flickered as he sized Qinmu up. Suddenly a dragon head shouted, "You definitely have a way to deal with my current crisis. That's why you came to find me so confidently. If you don't give me away, I'll throw you into the 9th hell." Qinmu smiled and looked around. "There's no need for you to throw me, I'll go in myself." Long Xiao opened his eyes wide. Qinmu walked around him and walked into the depths of Heaven Prison. The 2nd stage of Heaven Prison was behind Long Xiao's throne. It was a broken cliff and Qinmu leaped into it. He had wanted to see if this 9 prison stage could be considered a realm in Heaven Palace, but now he could test it out. Long Xiao hurriedly came to the edge of the broken cliff and looked down. He sneered. Heavenly Venerate Mu, if you can't take it anymore, just say the word and I'll save you. However, I don't dare to enter the 9th prison either. If you can still come out alive after jumping in, I'll form an alliance with you. The dragon Qilin came to the edge of the cliff, poked his head out and shouted. How can foster father ally with other people? Long Xiao glanced at him and spat. You are good brothers with him. How can I not know? Don't give me that trick. The dragon Qilin's hair stood on end. Long Xiao smiled. You are still too young. You are not as experienced as Celestial Master Mu. When I came into contact with you, I had already used my divine sense to know your ancestors from all 18 generations. The reason why I took you as my foster son was not only because I admired your shamelessness, but also because I wanted to take advantage of Celestial Master Mu. I wanted to surpass him in terms of seniority. Moreover, I also needed to establish a connection with Celestial Master Mu through you. I wouldn't fall out with him if I couldn't take him as my mount. The dragon Qilin immediately became obedient and praised sincerely. Foster father, you are wise. Of course. But don't even think about feeding me. Long Xiao sneered. God King Boyang is so smart. Didn't I arrange it so that he would die for me? The dragon Qilin's eyes lit up as he looked at him in worship, his tail wagging behind him. Long Xiao could not stand the way he looked at him. He quickly said, I've read your human rearing scripture from your memories. Don't use me as an experiment. The dragon Qilin lowered his head dejectedly. Foster father is indeed worthy of being able to raise the Boyang God King. As the leader of the 3 primordial God Kings, I feel ashamed of myself. Long Xiao laughed and said, You're not bad either. Don't worry. Be my foster son. Half of the ancestral court is behind you. The dragon Qilin blinked. I inadvertently raised him, and he inadvertently raised me. He's an expert. Qin Mu came to the 2nd stage of 9 prisons platform. The feeling of prison lock Great Tao was even more intense here, and the vital qi cultivation in his body also became incomparably sluggish, making it difficult for him to circulate it. The countless pores on his body seemed to have been sealed, and the qi in his body couldn't circulate with the outside world. Not only that, the stabbing pain became even more intense, as if there were countless invisible needles stabbing into his body. What was even stranger was that his primordial spirit, divine consciousness, and vital qi could all feel the pain of being stabbed by needles. If this is also a realm, what's the use of this realm? It's a pity that big senior brother isn't here. He was slightly puzzled. There was Heaven Prison and Heaven Court, and it was used to suppress the criminals who had committed the most heinous crimes. Back then, when Emperor Yun Luo Wei Suifeng had been captured, he had been imprisoned in Heaven Prison. If Wei Suifeng was here, he might be able to tell Qin Mu about his experiences in Heaven Prison for reference. If 9 prison platform is a realm, then which 2 realms should this realm be placed between among the 7 realms of Heaven Palace? Is it lower or higher than Jade platform? He felt it carefully and wanted to find the Tao realm contained in 9 prison platform. However, other than pain, he couldn't feel any Tao realm logic. He jumped into the 3rd stage of 9 prisons platform, and at that moment he saw many twisted corpses. They were giants that should be creators. They should have fallen into intense pain, so much so that their bones were deformed. Qin Mu even saw the head of one of the creators deformed, so he guessed that when this person was still alive, it must have been so painful that his face was distorted. Qin Mu's cultivation and abilities could be said to be the overlord of a region in the immemorial era. He could still endure it when he came to the 3rd stage, so he didn't think much of it and continued to walk on. He jumped to the 4th stage of Heaven Prison, but he still didn't feel any improvement to his Tao. It was just that the piercing pain had affected his primordial spirit, and the pain caused his heavenly palaces to begin to change shape. Interesting. He continued to go deeper and came to the 5th stage. When he reached there, the Great Tao was locked, and he couldn't use any of his paths, skills, and divine arts. However, the paths of Absolute Beginning, Taisu, and Tai Chi can still be used. As long as these 4 Great Tao can be used, this place won't be able to trap me. He came to the 6th stage, and his primordial spirit was already locked. It was sealed by a powerful seal in their respective heavenly palaces. Qin Mu's mind was a little muddle-headed, and he felt all sorts of messy thoughts surging into his mind. This place can disturb my Tao heart, just like the devil path and devil nature in you do. He came to the 7th stage, and his divine consciousness seemed to be locked up. His thoughts seemed to stop working, and Qin Mu restrained his thoughts, allowing them to gather in the ancestral hall of his spirit embryo divine treasure. He borrowed the power of the 5 great mineral veins to protect his thoughts and consciousness. When he reached the 8th stage, his vital qi had completely calmed down. He couldn't sense any aura of the great Tao in his body, and it was as if even his blood was stiffening, leaving behind an incomparably intense pain. The 8th stage of heaven prison was filled with corpses and bones. They were so twisted that he couldn't even see their original shape. He had even seen ancient gods. Long Xiao had indeed not lied to him. Many ancient gods had been thrown here. But in the end they couldn't even crawl out. In the end they died from the pain in this terrifying heaven prison. Qin Mu's mind rumbled as if there were billions of inner demons making noise, making it difficult for him to maintain his normal Tao heart. His eyes were blood red, and everything looked distorted. The entire world was distorted, and the sky, the earth, and himself were all distorted. This is bad. It's heavenly prison locking my Tao heart. If my Tao heart collapses, I'll probably end up like the corpses here, wailing and never be able to walk out. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Prison locking the great Tao was even more terrifying and sinister than he had imagined. The vertical eye in the heart of his brows opened, and when he looked around, the distorted feeling of the entire world instantly vanished. Heavenly Venerate Mu, you have come to a strange place. Supreme Beginning's voice came from his divine treasure. Supreme Beginning had been refining supreme primordial stone in the egg these days and rarely came out. Qin Mu's arrival had finally alarmed him. This place is like an incomparably sinister place in the ancestral court. It's not a place you can come to, so it's still not too late to retreat. Taisher and the egg used the vertical eye between Qin Mu's brows to examine his surroundings, and his heart jumped. He said solemnly, "There are a few places in the ancestral court that even I can't detect, and this is one of them. Apart from that, I can sense a few other places, and one of them is your big black wood." Qin Mu was slightly stunned. "In that case, Tao brother, which level did you sense?" "The lowest layer." Qin Mu came to the edge of the 8th layer and looked down. Taisher and the egg hurriedly shouted, "Don't look!" At that moment, Qin Mu had already seen the 9th layer of heaven prison. There was only a white light there, like a well reflecting the moonlight. The well water didn't have any ripples and reflected Qin Mu's face. The 9th stage of heaven prison wasn't big, only 20 yards square.
Qin Mu smiled.
"There's nothing here, so what's there to be surprised about?" Taisher and the egg sighed and said, "You're already on the 9th stage." Qin Mu was stunned. Only then did he realize that he wasn't looking down at the 9th stage, but at the sky. At that moment he was already on the 9th stage of heaven prison's 9th stage, looking up at the sky that was like a well. Even he himself didn't know when he had come down. "You're finished, your Tao heart has been locked." Taisher and the egg sighed and said, "Heavenly Venerate Mu, your Tao heart has been locked, your divine arts have been locked, your great Tao has been locked, your vital qi has been locked, and the power of your corporeal body has also been locked. All you have now is the divine consciousness hidden in the ancestral court of your divine treasure." Qin Mu's primordial spirit was wooden, and his vital qi froze. The great Tao runes in the heaven palace stopped changing, and the stars in his divine treasure and the imprints of the ancient gods in his corporeal body were all locked. There was still yin and yang qi circulating in the vertical eye between his brows, but Qin Mu couldn't use the power of the vertical eye at all. He was now a completely ordinary person without any divine arts. "Taoist brother Taisher, what do we do now?" Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Taisher and the egg said coldly, "In the past, you wouldn't have asked me what to do. You always had all sorts of strange ideas to tide over the difficulties, but now you have no idea and are asking me. Has your Tao heart already completely disappeared?" In the divine treasure ancestral court, in the mining area covered by the 5 mines, Qin Mu's divine consciousness was in a mess, and he actually couldn't come up with any ideas. Prison locked Tao heart, the final prison of the 9 prison platforms of heaven prison, was the biggest and most terrifying cage. Taisher and the egg sighed. "This 9 prison stage isn't something that you can enter on your current realm. If my guess isn't wrong, the 9 prison stage of Heaven prison should be ranked behind God execution stage in the 7 realms of Heaven Palace and before Jade Capital City. With your current abilities, you probably don't even have the ability to ascend to the God execution stage of the Ancestral Court. 9 prison stage, don't even think about going over. Qin Mu's heart was filled with fear as he sat down on the ground. At that moment he felt incomparably intense pain coming from every part of his body. It was so painful that his body was distorted and deformed. You have passed the God execution platform, so it should have another function. It's not just killing primordial spirits, but also Dao Path and Dao Heart. Only after you have passed would you be qualified to enter 9 prisons platform. Your only hope now is your divine sense hidden in the 5 minds. This is your last hope. Celestial Master Mu. Tai Shi and the egg shouted. Pull yourself together. You have to pull yourself together and reunite your Dao heart. Otherwise, you will die here just like all the creators and ancient gods in Heaven prison. Even though Qin Mu heard his words, he couldn't condense his divine consciousness, let alone reassemble his Dao heart. Just like what Tai Shi had said, this 9 hell stage wasn't a place that he could come to today. This natural heavenly prison should have been on the realm after God execution stage. However, in the early years of Dragon Han, when the gods built the heavenly court didn't refine the heavenly prison according to 9 hell stage. The heaven prison of the heaven was different from 9 prison stage. It didn't contain the great Tao of 9 prison stage, so no one knew anything about this realm. For a million years no one had done any research on 9 prison stage. Qin Mu's current realm had yet to reach Jade Lake realm, so when faced with the test of 9 prison stage, he didn't have anyone's experience to draw on. He could only fight against 9 prison platform alone. When his Dao heart was sealed, he was like a baby floating in a basket on surging river. His surroundings were all dark, and only the jade pendant on his chest was still emitting a faint light. The darkness around surging river was filled with ghosts and devil gods. The devils and monsters were sprinting on the surface of the river, appearing and disappearing mysteriously as they peered at him. The you in the past didn't have a Dao heart at all. Dao heart was cultivated step by yourself. Tai Shi's voice came from within the egg as though it was incomparably far away. You need to use your own will to overcome it and cultivate your Dao heart again. You can survive. His voice became farther and farther away, becoming fainter and fainter until it could no longer be heard. The intense pain surrounded Qin Mu, and fear drowned him. He was like a baby floating alone on surging river, and all he could see was darkness. What if Granny C didn't hear his cries in the basket, walk into the darkness, or lift him up from the basket? Would he still be the current him? Would he still be heavenly venerate Mu? Heaven prison's 9 prison platforms had crushed his Dao heart, and made it return to its original state, crushing his fighting spirit and turning him into a weak baby. Darkness would eventually invade and devour him completely. Qin Mu's eyes gradually dimmed, and in the end, everything was devoured by darkness. The egg of supreme beginning that had been trying its best to call out to Qin Mu also calmed down. It was over. Qin Mu's Dao heart had been locked, and his fighting spirit had been completely destroyed. It was impossible for him to awaken his Dao heart and become heavenly venerate Mu again. The 9 prison platforms were completely silent. There were actually no cries of the billions of commoners that Qin Mu had heard. Nor were there any seals on the great Tao, divine consciousness, vital qi, and primordial spirit. Ever since he had stepped into this place, what had been locked was his Tao heart. Locking the great Tao, his corporeal body, vital qi, and divine consciousness were all just appearances. It was precisely because his Tao heart felt that it had been locked that he had seen his corporeal body, vital qi, primordial spirit, great Tao, and divine consciousness all locked up. Village Chief's overlord body legend made people think that they could do anything. A 9 prison stage locking up Dao heart made people think that they couldn't do anything. Qin Mu lay in the middle of 9 prison stage. He hadn't moved for a long time, and at most he would twitch and twist from time to time. In this world, even the existence with the strongest Dao heart is unable to resist 9 prison stage. I should be trapped in his body until the day he dies. Tai Shi thought to himself. Maybe I can only escape when his corpse rots. Heavenly venerate Mu, are you really unable to break through prison locked Dao heart? Qin Mu curled up his body weakly. His surroundings were completely dark and there was no light. Listen, there's the sound of a child crying outside. I think Muir should be a different kind of constitution, an overlord body that combines the length of the 4 great constitutions. As long as you have faith, a mortal body is an overlord body. It's hard to break a god in a broken temple. And it's even harder to break a god in your heart. The path of a saint is no different from the daily use of the people. Anyone who is different is a heresy. Doing things in a straightforward manner and being pure in nature is the path. The reason why Imperial Preceptor and I are pushing for change is to change the situation where the sects control the lifeblood of the people and the country. Not only do I want to change, but I also want a revolution. I want to change the lives of these sects and change my own life. Founding Emperor's reform should follow the heavens and follow the people. What's the use of this sword? What's the use? This sword can't be polished anymore. There is no carefree village in this world. If we decay in the future, there will be descendants who will overthrow us. There's no need to think so much. Take care. I'll have to rely on fellow Taoists for the future. Cultmaster, you're right. After a long time, Qin Mu opened his eyes. His Tao heart was still locked, and he still looked like a mortal. However, hope was ignited in him. Tai is right. I didn't have a Tao heart in the past, and it was honed. In the past, I wasn't a divine arts practitioner, much less a god. I cultivated it. In the past, I wasn't Cultmaster Qin, Human Emperor Qin, or Heavenly Venerate Mu. I fought for it step by step. In the past, I didn't have my own soul or corporeal body, but I had my own consciousness. In the past, I didn't have my own Tao friends, but I had many of my own friends. In the past, I was an orphan with no relatives, but I had disabled elderly village and eternal peace. In the past, I didn't have my own path. But now. He gritted his teeth and resisted the bone-piercing pain. He stood up shakily and tried his best to control his divine consciousness to keep his consciousness clear. But now I have my own path and path. The pain distorted his consciousness, but he still desperately urged his divine sense to forcefully urge the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. As he walked, it was as if he had returned to the disabled elderly village. He had returned to the bitter days of running and training. But this time, his footsteps were extremely empty. His body was distorted and swaying as he walked with great difficulty at the lowest level of the Heaven Prison 9 prison stage. His soul consciousness moved the Yuan Qi that had already become rigid, making it follow his soul consciousness. He used all his strength to activate his technique. He felt that wherever his soul consciousness and Yuan Qi passed by, it was as painful as scraping his bones. He was trembling. Every step he took was extremely painful. The absolute beginning egg still didn't speak. He was observing this scene. He was observing how a lowly creature that had fallen into a desperate situation walked out of the desperate situation. He was also observing what supported him to continue walking. He had always been biased against postnatal life forms, and he didn't have a good impression of ancient gods either. It was the creator of the postnatal life forms who had dug him out of the mine of primordial beginning, and it was the ancient god, Heavenly Emperor Primordial Beginning, who had imprisoned him. Yet now he could see the unimaginable vitality of the life forms in this world from Qin Mu's body. Qin Mu's incomparably tenacious and even stubborn will made him admire him. In a space that was 20 feet square, he would need to spend an hour to walk for a week. The Dragon Qilin and Long Shao stood at an extremely high place. When they looked down, they could only see a square inch of land where a tiny figure was moving slowly. Can Cultmaster walk out from inside? The Dragon Qilin couldn't help being a little worried as he looked at Long Shao. There were huge beasts that had picked up spirit herbs from outside. Their bodies were already twisted from the pain even before they arrived here, making it difficult for them to walk forward. The Dragon Qilin hurriedly went forward to receive the spirit herbs. His Tao heart was much more profound than these huge beasts. If Heavenly Venerate Mu really walks out from the 9 prisons platform, do I really have to join hands with him? Long Shao looked at the square inch and said in a low voice. The Dragon Qilin was slightly startled and couldn't help but ask with joy. Cultmaster can walk out of there? Long Shao stared at the 9th stage. He said softly. His speed is gradually increasing. I've never seen anyone walk through the 9th stage of the 9 prison stage. And I've never seen anyone who can reunite their Tao heart even when their Tao heart is locked. Yet he has done it. The dragon Qilin was overjoyed and laid on the edge to look over as well. However, he saw that Qin Mu was still walking very slowly and with great difficulty. Every step seemed to exhaust all his strength. After another 2 days, he could clearly see that Qin Mu's speed was indeed increasing. However, this kind of improvement was really slow and made him worried. Gradually, Qin Mu's walking speed became faster and faster. He could only walk a week in half an hour, but now he only needed the time for an incense stick to burn. Long Xiao walked back and forth, occasionally raising his head to look at the sky and occasionally lowering his head to look at Qin Mu struggling in heaven prison. He was truly hesitant in his heart. He wasn't willing to form an alliance with Qin Mu. Qin Mu's abilities were too weak, so if he were to rely on any one of the 10 heavenly venerables, he could stabilize his current position. At most, he could only be a mount for the heavenly venerables. By forming an alliance with Qin Mu, he could still maintain his independence in name, but Qin Mu couldn't give him any protection for the huge beasts on the back of the ancestral court. However, Heavenly Venerate Mu's potential is extremely great. Moreover, just as Heavenly Venerate Mu said, if the 10 heavenly venerates were to split the back of the ancestral court, my position would be extremely awkward. Long Zhao's 9 faces were uncertain. They will most likely split me into 10 portions and divide me equally. But if there are 11 celestial venerables, they will probably split me into 11 portions. After all, the 4 emperors of ancient God are nominally 4 emperors, but there are 5 of them, and the 10 celestial venerables will most likely have 11 as well. Suddenly, Long Zhao's expression changed slightly. He sensed that a terrifying existence had descended on the back of the ancestral court. This person isn't Celestial Master Gong, nor is it Concubine Yen, nor is it Divine Emperor Langxian. Then it must be another existence among the 10 celestial venerables. Long Xiao sensed the aura carefully and quickly swallowed a few mouthfuls of the spirit herb sent by the dragon Qilin to calm his injuries. He said in a deep voice, "One of the 10 celestial masters has descended, so the other celestial masters are not far away. Dragons can be big or small, but they can appear or hide. Pai, we need to hide now." The dragon Qilin hesitated for a moment. Then Celestial Master Mu. "When he comes out, I will go look for him. After all, I need a way out." Long Xiao sensed another terrifying aura descending on the back of the ancestral court. His expression changed again. "The 10 heavenly venerates came faster than I thought. Let's go." He picked up the dragon Qilin without any explanation and said in a deep voice, "I will teach you the way of transformation. Try to figure it out with your heart." At this moment, another terrifying aura descended on the ancestral court. Long Xiao hurriedly turned into a gust of wind and whistled away. In a short period of time, 6 of the 10 celestial venerables had arrived. The 6 celestial venerables were extremely fast. They measured the world with their feet and scanned the back of the ancestral court with their eyes, alerting the countless giant beasts that were resting there. Their bodies were tall and sturdy. The aura of a single celestial venerate was enough to suppress the back of the ancestral court, let alone the 6 celestial venerables. Even the extremely powerful giant beasts in the ancestral court did not dare to show their heads at this moment. They were trembling in fear and prostrating on the ground. The 6 celestial masters measured the heaven and earth, and within a few days, they traveled through the lakes, seas, mountains, and rivers to inspect them. At the edge of a great swamp, there were groups of kuei cows. These kuei cows lowered their heads and ate the abundant water grass. When the grass around them was finished, one of their legs would jump up, and they would jump to other places where the water grass was abundant and continue to eat. The bulls among the kuei cows had a bad temper and often fought. Whenever they fought, thunder would burst out from their stomachs and rumble. These kuei cows were born to control thunder, but they were not weak either. At this time, the shadow of a heavenly venerate appeared in the sky above the herd. The divine light around his body was like raging flames. It turned into a huge wheel of fire behind his head, and his face could not be seen clearly. His body was even larger than the largest beast. He stood tall in the sky, causing the sky to distort. His gaze swept over the herd, and the kuei cows all collapsed to the ground. The celestial inspected the herd, but did not find anything unusual. He whistled away and disappeared without a trace. After the celestial left, the herd of cattle once again ate grass and fought as before. There were 2 kuei cows, one big and one small, wagging their tails and trying hard to eat grass. The calf cried while eating grass, "Foster father, are we really going to eat grass? Don't talk." The old cow was eating grass seriously and said vaguely, "The heavenly venerate didn't go far. He was still observing us and kept eating. Even with tears in his eyes, he still wants to eat." In the sky a fire eye appeared silently. It stared at the herd of oxen and then quietly disappeared. Long Xiao is very good at hiding. It is very difficult to find him. The 6 heavenly venerates gathered again and shook their heads. He is seriously injured. After all, he is a creature from the barbaric era. Civilization does not exist. If he wants to be cured, he will have to wait thousands of years longer than us. While they were talking, 2 more heavenly venerates suddenly appeared. They were the heaven concubine and the palace heavenly venerate, who came to the back of the ancestral court one after the other. There are still 2 fellow Taoists who have yet to arrive. Heavenly Venerate Xiao and Heavenly Venerate Hao should not be coming, right? Heavenly Venerate Hong looked around and chuckled. As soon as he finished speaking, Heavenly Venerate Hao's voice suddenly came from outside the sky. Heavenly Venerate Xiao was exiled by Heavenly Venerate Yu and the other rebels. He can choose not to come, but why can't I come? The other Heavenly Venerates were astonished when they saw Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven descending from the sky. Everyone, how should we divide the back of the ancestral court? We have to set a rule. Heavenly Venerate Vast Heaven looked around, making all the Heavenly Venerates feel a chill in their hearts. They didn't know how deep he was. 9 Hell Lock Dao Heart. It's extremely difficult to break through this kind of blockade. In the egg, Supreme Beginning carefully observed Qin Mu's actions. He was in the ancestral court of Qin Mu's God's treasure, so he could clearly see that the ancestral court was slowly recovering its vitality. His great Tao regained its fluidity bit by bit, and vital qi filled the air. It was like a breeze in early spring, allowing the life force of the ancestral hall to gradually grow. However, Heavenly Venerate Mu is slowly trying to break through this kind of seal, and his speed will become faster and faster. If his Tao heart breaks through the seal, then his cultivation will also break through the seal. Primordial spirit, corporeal body, vital qi, divine consciousness, bloodline, God's treasure, heavenly palace, break the seal one by one. Tai Shi in the egg was a little curious about Qin Mu's current condition. He didn't have a realm, so if he was born perfectly, he would surpass the so-called heavenly court realm and reach the ultimate void of the great Tao. He didn't need to cultivate like Qin Mu. He didn't need to risk his life and risk his life time and time again to comprehend. He also didn't need to risk his life like Qin Mu. However, in terms of Tao heart, he wasn't any more brilliant than Qin Mu. He had experienced too little. To him, this was a kind of luck and not a misfortune. Qin Mu's current state had great enlightenment for him. If he lost his identity as the ancient god of egg birth and everything he had now, would he be able to rise again? The path of a hero's rise was very difficult, but what was even more difficult was the process of a hero falling and rising again. Those who could do it were all outstanding people. Qin Mu's Tao heart was reassembling bit by bit, as if he was walking back to the process of honing his Tao heart. His Tao heart was gradually reassembling, and his cultivation was also continuously breaking through the seal of 9 prison stage. As his Tao heart was reassembling, the seal of 9 prison stage was slowly being unsealed, and his cultivation was also recovering. Not only that, every time a thread of the seal was unsealed, the seal of 9 prison stage would turn into a mysterious Tao sound and Tao rhythm. It would fuse into his Tao heart and his Tao path. This was a brand new realm, a realm that he had never come into contact with before. However, this realm was being developed by him and was gradually being perfected. The cultivation power that Qin Mu could use gradually increased, and his walking speed also gradually increased. The secrets of the realm of 9 prison stage were also slowly being developed by him. In his heavenly palace, 9 prison stage also gradually appeared. With his understanding of 9 prison stages Tao heart, he was rebuilding the heavenly prison of the heavenly court and transforming it into a realm. With his intelligence, it would definitely be difficult for him to develop all the secrets of this realm. He still needed the hard work of the other gods and countless people in the future to turn this realm into a mature realm. However, he could confirm this realm first. Furthermore, he had personally experienced Ninetales stage and personally unsealed it. He would surpass countless gods in the future. Ninetales stage was simply too dangerous, too dangerous. Very few people could enter Ninetales stage and reunite their Tao hearts without dying. The path in the future would be for Qin Mu to develop this realm and teach how to open Ninetales stage. It would allow the world to open up this realm. Basically, all the gods continued to develop the profoundness of Ninetales stage on his foundation, so in terms of comprehension, it wasn't as exquisite as directly entering Ninetales stage. Of course, if one had the ability to enter the real Ninetales stage, they could also comprehend it like him to temper themselves, and their achievements would not be lower than his. However, there were very few people who could do this. Even among the 10 heavenly venerates, there were probably less than 5 who could enter the Ninetales stage and obtain the mysteries of the Ninetales stage. It was more likely that the Ninetales stage could not lock the 10 heavenly venerates. They entered this place and then left with nothing. 9 prison platform had too high a requirement for Tao heart. The slightest carelessness could cause them to sink into the prison forever. Walking out of 9 prison platform alive required one to have extremely high attainments in Tao realm cultivation. The lowest requirement was 24 heavens of Tao realm. However, 24 heavens of Tao realm wasn't enough to guarantee one would be able to walk out alive. Qin Mu was able to walk out because of his fortuitous encounter, so others might not have the same fortuitous encounter as him. The current gods were all in the system of divine treasures and heavenly palaces. Gods and devils only focused on strength, and their attainments in Tao realm weren't high. As a result, they could only die in prison. As time passed, Qin Mu unsealed more and more seals. In his spirit embryo divine treasure, the ancestral court had completely recovered its vitality, and the great Tao was flourishing. The 19 heavenly palaces also recovered, and primordial spirits stood tall in them. Their divine arts were vast. Meanwhile, the divine treasures, profound capital, Yudu, primordial capital, and all the other worlds were slowly unsealing themselves. Qin Mu's cultivation became purer, and the circulation of his Tao heart became more and more transparent. He fell into a strange realm. The marvel of Tao on Ninetales stage turned into Tao sounds and Tao rhyme, which then turned into strange Tao patterns as his vital qi and great Tao broke through the seal. They formed 9 hell stages in his heavenly palaces. Not only that, Qin Mu even mobilized his new cultivation to prepare to open up 9 prison stage in his heavenly palace and 9 prison stage in the back of his ancestral court. His ambition didn't stop there. He wanted to build 4 heavenly gates in his ancestral court, manage the Jade Terrace and Jade Lake, and build his god execution stage, Jade Capital City. In the small square inch, his cultivation became more and more vigorous, and the speed at which he moved became faster and faster. In his eyes, this small area was like an endless journey to sharpen his Tao heart. Cracking sounds came from within his body, and the sealed divine sense and great Tao continued to break. His qi and blood surged out like a wild tide from the 9th prison, filling up the 8th prison, the 7th prison, and the 6th prison. After a moment, a surging sound like a tide suddenly came from the 9 prison stage. Each sound was louder than the last, and each wave was higher than the last. Amidst the earth-shaking loud sound, a vast ocean of qi and blood surged out, filling up the heavenly prison and turning it into a sea of qi and blood. Boom! A heavenly palace leaped out from the sea of qi and blood on 9 prisons platform and sat on the surface of the sea. Rays of light shot out in all directions from the heavenly palace. At the same time, another heavenly palace leaped out and suppressed the sea of qi and blood, connecting it into a heavenly court with thousands of palaces and palaces. Qin Mu's figure slowly rose from the sea of qi and blood. His body was tall and sturdy, and his posture was vigorous and steady. He slowly walked out of the sea of qi and blood. In his body, there were nearly 2,000 imprints of ancient gods residing in all the orifices of his corporeal body. His mind was clear, and the great Tao was as pure as one. This was a phenomenon he had never seen before. His understanding of the great Tao of ancient gods mainly came from the records of the Guardian Pavilion. In addition to the analysis of microscopic algebra and Supreme Emperor Supreme Luo's Supreme Divine Consciousness. Because of this, He had refined nearly 2,000 imprints of ancient gods, and hid them in all the orifices of his corporeal body to increase the strength of his corporeal body. However, these imprints weren't complete, and the great Tao wasn't pure. In particular, he had not received the supreme divine sense of Great Luo. Instead, he had refined the divine sense of Great Emperor to seize his memories. Moreover, he had not seen those ancient gods who had disappeared in history. He was unable to refine his physical body to the level of Great Emperor. And this time, after prison lock's Tao heart was reforged, he had also baptized the great Tao contained in these imprints of ancient gods. His various comprehensions were deeper, and his understanding of the Tao was purer. Although his physical body was still far from being comparable to the Supreme Emperor at his peak, he already had the potential to be on par with or even surpass the Supreme Emperor. His main primordial spirit rose vast and boundless. He sat in the heavenly court, and one after another, subordinate primordial spirits flew out and landed in their respective heavenly palaces. The main primordial spirit controlled the subordinate primordial spirits, just like a great emperor who controlled the heavens and earth, commanding the emperors who guarded the various great Tao. The sea of qi and blood boiled and gradually rose, fusing into his corporeal body. Qin Mu lowered his head to look at 9 prison stage and saw that there was nothing in it. However, in his eyes, he could see the Tao heart that had been locked up in the past. The 9th prison was under his feet, but in the 9th prison in his heart, he was moving forward diligently. His footsteps were heavy, and he was measuring his heart step by step. He understood something in his heart. Although he had jumped out of the 9 prison stage, his Tao heart was still in the prison, constantly honing itself. The human world is a big cage. Everyone is in the prison forging ahead. The thorns in the 9 prison stage are the obstacles one has to face in life. They are sharp thorns that pierce one's body until it is riddled with holes. They pierce one's Tao heart until it is riddled with holes. The weak suffer in pain and wail in pain. However, the strong try their best to move forward and never retreat. The weak cower in the prison and never move forward. The strong try to escape. His Buddhist heavenly palace suddenly became complete. His Buddhist immortal soul treasure looked solemn. He was dressed in white and was barefooted. He had a smile on his face after experiencing countless hardships. Buddha did not have any cultivation techniques. Brahma did not teach him any cultivation techniques. And old Ma did not teach him any Buddhist heavenly palace. Buddha was a form of mind learning. Once one comprehended it, the Buddhist way of the heavenly palace would naturally be cultivated. He looked at the 9 prison stage. Although he had jumped out, his heart was still in prison. And although he had jumped out of the 9 prison stage, wasn't the human world also another 9 prison stage? He let out a long laugh. His Tao heart was refined. In the state of enlightenment, he could not help but display the 25th heaven of the Tao realm that he had comprehended. The 9 prisons heart-locking Tao existed forever. He stepped on the 9 prisons, and countless Qi Mountain Tao spikes spun wildly on the 9 prisons platform. The spikes, big and small, locked the enemy's Tao heart.